Hey, what's going on? I'm Ryan Glick, co-founder and CEO of Groove. And if you're a real estate professional, I have something I think you're going to be interested in. We've developed a platform that's transforming the way deals are prospected and managed in the real estate world. With Groove, you can organize real estate data in one place and share real estate deals with just one click. Join other real estate pros and reclaim up to 90% of your time. Head over to letsgroove.com/signup and start your free trial today.
Do you ever ask yourself, how would my life be different if I had made different choices? Would I be happier? More wealthy? Here's a humorous novel that explores that question, venturing back to that magical time in the early 90s when grunge was taking over big hair bands. It was just when our hero, Amy Gare, began to face the real world. You Hawkeye fans just might enjoy the setting as well. Goodbye Def Leppard, I'll Miss Those Jeans by Steph Kramer can be found on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and it's free for Kindle Unlimited subscribers. Chasmium believes every young athlete deserves a shot at greatness. By making data analytics accessible and easy, they provide a new way for coaches and athletes to improve their game. Chasmium's digital scoring app, all-in-one stats, and chart software enable teams to quickly and easily find new ways to strategize and harness the power of data. Join Chasmium in revolutionizing the world of youth sports with tools that make a difference. Schedule a software demo or sign up today at chasmium.com. Chasmium, where sports technology sparks victory. Yeah, well, Hawkeyes fall in Columbus. Final score 35-7. I am Corey Brady, your host here. Iowa postgame with Coach Don Patterson, and I'm pleased to be joined right off the bat, right from the get-go this evening, with Mr. and Coach Don Patterson himself. Don, you're going to be providing some therapy sessions this evening. I have a good feeling about this. You're going to be Dr. Don tonight, and so be it. We've played that role before, you especially. So many things to get to. I know people are want to chat with you. Got a couple of people who have already began the call-in process. If you're new here, we have a phone line you can call, 515-635-1601. It's scrolling across the bottom of your screen. But you can also log into StreamYard. Very simple to do that with a Google or Facebook account. All your information's private, but you can talk to us that way and ask Coach or myself a question. If you're put on hold, stay on hold, because if you drop off the phone line, you lose your place in line. It's pretty simple. So to our callers who are waiting on hold, we're going to have them wait just a couple of minutes, Don, because I want to talk to you one-on-one here to start.
Okay.
And I don't know really where to start other than let me give my basic takeaways following what ended up being a bloodbath. And that is this. I am disappointed in the Iowa offensive line. I'm going to start there because everybody's been praising the rushing attack and specifically Caleb Johnson. But Don, you and I have had conversations. I have over and over again throughout each solid rushing performance this season given plenty of credit and praise to the Iowa run game, specifically the entire unit, but also the offensive line. I think Iowa's fullbacks have done a nice job blocking. Iowa's tight ends have done a nice job blocking. Sometimes we give too much credit to a quarterback when a team wins. I think we give too much credit to a running back at times when a run game is successful. Caleb Johnson's been really good. But I thought we saw today, Don, especially in that first half, and I understand they're going up against heavy boxes and really talented fronts, but I thought pass pro was bad at times, and I thought the run support, or I shouldn't say run support, the run blocking from the offensive line was not very good. But it's hard for me as a non-coach, Don, to evaluate the offensive line in live game action when you're dealing with extra people. We've seen Iowa successfully run against loaded fronts. You tell me what you saw. Were you as disappointed in the offensive line today as I was?
I thought the matchups O-line versus D-line, I thought Ohio State won both those matchups. I thought their D-line in general performed better than their O-line and vice versa. It was pretty easy for them to gain 4 yards on every running play that they had.
But Don, real quick, not to defend the defensive line, but if there's any spot on the field where Iowa should be able to exert its will, it's with an offensive line that is full of 4th, 5th, and 6th year guys, Don.
Right.
That's my issue and why I'm honing.
Yeah, that was a disappointment. It's safe to say Ohio State's D-line won that matchup.
So how much of that was just the defensive line winning the matchup? How much is it when they're throwing extra guys into the box? I mean, we've heard a lot about stacked boxes over the last 2 weeks.
Well, in general, the pressure they got was not any extra rushers in general.
That's what I felt.
Yeah.
And there were too many plays, and CBS zeroed in on several of these, Don, not just in the run game, but also with the passing game. There were too many examples that were even shown on the TV film of individual linemen just getting beat. Colby getting backed up into his quarterback, Dunker getting backed up into his quarterback. And I'm sorry, I'm going to come down sort of heavy on the offensive line because, like I said at the outset, we've been told throughout the Brian era, some of these guys were here in 2020, 2021. A lot of these guys who are starting, we've went through this. They're all upperclassmen. Some of them are 5th, 6th year guys.
Right.
And to me, I don't care how talented Ohio State is. If your head coach is an offensive line coach and you've had people who are healthy right now, this entire line is healthy, and you've got 4, 5, 6 years to develop these players, you ought to be able to go into Ohio State and at least at that position on the field, at least at that point, compete. And I didn't feel like they competed very well. And I don't know that I blame anyone specific. Like I said, I'm just disappointed as a collectively in that unit.
Yeah, let's not forget in terms of development in recent years, Kirk has assisted with their development, as has Brian, both of which know a lot about O-line play. Not to mention George, of course, as the O-line coach. So at this point in their careers, they should be playing well. And maybe I underestimated Ohio State's D-line. I think they're a little better than what I thought. But the bottom line is they won the battle up front. We didn't win it. If you don't believe it, just think about how many yards Caleb had after 3 quarters. He didn't have a lot of running room. And a lot of the yards came kind of late. There was a nice run in the 3rd quarter. The only reason it was a nice run is Caleb didn't run through a tackle. It was a safety attempted a tackle, and Caleb ran through him. And that was an explosive play, but there weren't enough of them, obviously.
How would you rate Caleb Johnson's performance today, given some of the struggles up front? I mean, is it hard to evaluate a guy at first glance as a running back in this situation?
Well, there wasn't a lot of room to run. Near as I can tell, there wasn't much room to run. Very seldom did you say, oh my gosh, we got him into a one-on-one situation in the open field and he got tackled. I do recall on that long run, he was in the open field and it was downs that bumped him out of bounds. And you could argue at that point in the game, why not try to put on your brakes and cut back against the grain? Because we needed a touchdown. We didn't just need another gain of 30 yards. We needed a touchdown.
That's not really his style, though. To cut. That's not really his style to put his foot in the ground and then track back in.
It's not. It's not. You're right. And for that matter, I made the same note about Weechin. Weechin had a punt return. It looked like it might go for a while, but as we've discussed, don't run out of bounds. It's okay to put on the brakes and try to cut back against the grain. That's what Tim DeWhite did. If Tim DeWhite can do it, then I think Caden can do it also.
And it's things that Charlie Jones did, and I think Cooper DeJean did it. We saw Cooper DeJean do it against Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
On the play that
so
was
that's
called.
The next step for Caden is to be able to stay on the field and challenge him even more downfield than what he already has.
Can I ask a stupid question for a second?
I don't think you ever ask a stupid question, but go ahead and try.
Thank you. Why are we punting on 4th and 7 with under 4 minutes to go?
Because we've raised the white flag.
You've got a backup unit in there and a backup quarterback. Why not give them a chance to stay on the field? What's the point?
I suppose you don't want to give up 42.
Well, I think you know that doesn't hold water, but who cares? Who cares? And at that point, Ohio State.
What I thought you were going to ask about is our fake punt. I thought you were going to ask about that. I'm sure you get to.
We'll get to that, Don. We'll get to that. I think Kirk maybe isn't as much to blame as he's being made out to be with that, but it's still an example of an incredibly unfortunate blunder. You know what I equate it to? I equate it to 2014 when Kirk called a timeout right before the Iowa State kicker missed the potential game-winning field goal to ice him. Right. He comes back on the field and kicks the game winner because Kirk didn't know that he was going to miss the first one, and Kirk didn't know today that Hayden Large was going to push forward for the first down. And I saw former Iowa long snapper tweeted this out, Tyler Kluver, and it's consistent with everything I know to be the case as well, and I'm sure you'd agree, Don. You bring out something like that, and if the defense shows a good look, if they give you the right look, then you stay in the fake play call, and if not, then you either option out of it or you call a timeout. I guess what I would like to know, and this is probably something we'll ever get the answer out of Kirk on, but if Kirk didn't like the front that Ohio State showed on that play, Don, okay, so they called a timeout. Is there not an ability? I'd like to know about the helmet communication in a situation like that. There's no quarterback on the field, so does somebody have helmet communication with LeVar in that situation?
I don't think so. I'd be surprised if they did.
Why couldn't you?
Who would it be? The punter?
Someone, because in a situation like that, wouldn't you rather be able to tell him kill, and then he makes a call there without having to burn a timeout? And
you could have that plan in place long before the game. You can practice it that way. That's what you're saying. Just because you've heard me say, Corey, different, but still the same. You've heard me say exotics are good. And those people that say, well, the problem with exotics, you got to call them at the right time. My answer is no, you don't. If you guess wrong, you change the play. You save it for the next play. Or you call it 8 plays later, whatever. You can do the same thing with the kicking game, of course. You can say the fake's on unless we get the wrong look, at which point we make a call. That means we're going to punt.
So that's my question. So why did that not occur? Let's just address that now. Why did that not occur? Why was Kirk ready to call a timeout instead? And you're running the risk of what happened. You're running the risk of having what happened happen, even if they hadn't made it. Like, because they ran it, now you're kind of done, right? You can't run it again, in a sense. not like a normal exotic on offense that you might be able to run it again because you have a ton of opportunities. You're basically done for the game and maybe for the season. Not necessarily for the season, but possibly for the season, running that fake punt play again, correct?
Well, you've shown it now. And certainly everybody on our schedule is going to practice for that look.
So why wasn't there a situation?
Well, in that regard, we wasted the play.
So why wasn't there something installed where someone else can audible out of that as opposed to the coach having to call a timeout?
All I can think is they were very consistent maybe with their alignments. It was there. And as a result of that, it had been routinely there with the right kind of alignment. And maybe they crossed us up and gave us a different alignment. And we hadn't prepared for that, so we were in no position to kill the play from the field. The only way to kill the play was to burn the timeout. That's probably what happened.
So let me ask you that: what was your reaction to that whole series of events, other than it was unfortunate for Iowa? I mean, are you blame Kirk in that situation? Can you really blame anybody?
No, because let's back up. If we called the timeout and we ran for 40 yards, people would have really been saying, "Why'd you call the timeout?" Let's not forget, we needed one. We gained 1.5 yards. We didn't gain much more than the first down.
Yeah, and it wasn't like it was an easy game. I mean, he had to extend himself for that first down, and he did get it clearly.
Right, but not by much.
Right.
And in that regard, let's not forget that the score at the time was 7-0. We had us a good football game, right? At that point.
Yeah.
Must have been probably early second quarter based on my notes.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. Yes,
yeah.
Early second quarter.
Yeah, it was just unfortunate, but I certainly understood. We were in the game as we wanted to be. I made comments during the week. Let's keep it a one-score game, ideally for a long, long, long time, and let's find a way to win it in the fourth quarter. Well, it was a one-score game. Frankly, if you'd have said to Kirk or any other Iowa fan, "Hey, what about 7-0 at the half? Would you take that?" And the answer would be not yes, but hell yes. Right?
Yeah, but is it fair to say that I don't know that you can equate 7-0 with 21-14? Isn't there something almost psychological about, okay, we're within a score, but we can't score ourselves?
Well, that's not for Well, you're right about one thing. We didn't have a lot of offense in the first half. But we had 18 rushing yards in the half. Total offense in the half. 30 plays. This is not official. I don't know what the play-by-play shows, but 30 plays, 90 yards. 90 yards offense.
So in a sense, like it was 7-0 at halftime, and I agree with you. I felt like, hey, they're in this game right now. But at the same time, the fact that they hadn't sniffed the end zone, it was like, man, how are they going to get there in my mind? And so I don't know if the players are thinking anything close to that, but I'm just thinking they're still a long ways off because they haven't sniffed the red zone yet. Not just the end zone, the red zone.
Let's not forget, number 2 is a game breaker if we can get him in the open field.
But boy, there were no holes in that first half for him.
And the sad aspect of our game right now is he's the only guy that has great potential to give us explosive plays. We can't point to anyone else and say, there's a guy that's a true game breaker. Right now, he's the only one that's proven to be so.
All right, before we get to our first callers on the day, we're going to put our phone line caller on hold, a brief hold. We'll come right back to them. We want to thank our sponsor, first of all, Iowa Smokehouse. They've been with us here through basketball and football for the last couple of seasons. If you have not gotten your orders put in, be sure to do so before it gets cold, before you want to just stay in the house and not take the trip to the grocery store on game day. Visit iowasmokehouse.com and use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order with their beef sticks, their jerky, their meat sticks, their steak bites. Everything is great. Their ketchups, barbecue sauces, and salsas. You'll never need to go anywhere else or look anywhere else. Tasting is believing with Iowa Smokehouse. Use the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com. And, of course, Brad Van Meter down at State Farm. Call Brad for a great quote on insurance. Homeowners, life, renters, auto, whatever the case may be, Brad and his team will take care of you like the Hawkeye family, friends that you are, give them a call, 515-256-6480. That's 515-256-6480, or visit him online at bradvanmeter.com. And our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line is full right now. But again, if you are on the phone line, I'm going to repeat this one more time. If you call in via phone, I'm going to put you on hold. You're not getting in right away. So if you hang up, you just go to the back of the line. So I don't know why people keep doing that. Call in and hang out for a while. You'll have to call in a different device if you want to continue to listen to the show. That's just the nature of the game here. So let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Bright and early, it was Ryan who was here first. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, gentlemen. How are you tonight?
Hey, Ryan.
Kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the punt, 4th and half a yard, 7-0 Ohio State. We're on the right side of the 50-yard line. I kind of thought we lost the game right there. And the reason I say that is your opportunities against this defense of Ohio State to score are going to be very few and far between. And that seemed to me like our one good chance of getting points on the board. And punting in that situation on a 4th and half yard, I mean, put Brennan Sullivan in there and let him run something, or QB sneak it somehow. It just, I'm really.
Well, if Sullivan's in the game, you mean
Well, no, McNamara was in the game at the time, but
about
when
putting him in
it's
with
fourth, yeah, it's 4th and half a yard. Maybe put Sullivan in to get the first down.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can do that, but the problem is what we've talked about before. If you put in Sullivan, it's almost guaranteed to be read as a run, either handoff to Caleb or not that he's no threat to pass, but is that what you're talking about? You're saying bring him in on a run?
Well, he's more mobile. He's a great runner, and frankly, Iowa is a run team anyway. I mean, let's face it. 75% of the play calls you can tell are going to be runs, and everyone in the stadium knows it.
Part of the problem with 4th and 1 in that situation, and I just want to clarify: are we talking about the same 4th and short that they
first quarter?
So not the
first
fake
quarter
punt.
It was 7-0. It was 7-0.
Okay, well they were 7-0 both times then, but first quarter 7-0 they punt. When it happened, I was kind of with you. I'm like, come on, guys. But at the same time, I understand where Kirk's coming from. I'm not trying to sound like an apologist, but they were not getting a push. So when you're not getting any push up front through the first quarter of the game, Don, you probably don't have much confidence in a sneak, in a run with Caleb, in a quarterback run with a guy like Brendan Sullivan, fullback dive with Hayden Large. And that's why I think in the second quarter, you go fake punt to try to catch him off guard. And again, they didn't catch Ohio State off guard, or Kirk wouldn't have went up there and called the timeout, and Hayden barely got that first down. But I understand Ryan's frustration about punting in that situation, but that's how Kirk's wired, correct?
I just feel
yes, wired.
I feel like Kirk, he has not had our team in a position to be competitive with the upper echelon teams. And when I say competitive, I mean, we embarrassed ourselves at Penn State. We embarrassed ourselves how many times against Michigan?
That is what this conversation needs to be about, primarily. That is exactly what this conversation needs to be about. And it's in a way almost unfortunate that Iowa scored that last garbage touchdown against the Ohio State twos. Right. Because it takes away from the fact that Iowa's in their last 4 games against ranked opponents have been blown out something like 124-0. If you don't count that last garbage touchdown. And sure, we can count it. Okay, 124-7. That's what this conversation should be about. And I don't know that it'll be asked of Kirk post-game. This is a different season. But I don't think it's I know that if I was there, I'd be accused of going after Kirk, which would not be my approach or goal. But I think it's a fair question to ask. How do you explain being outscored in your last 4 games against ranked opponents 124-7, if that's the correct number? I mean, that's startling.
I think it's 127, but who's counting?
127-7. Okay, no, that's even worse. So that's the conversation, the macro conversation that we need to have. And by the way, Ryan, you and I both know this. 3 of those games, they don't include Leicester. So you can put Leicester over the barrel today if you want. Yeah, I mean, his offense has got to be better, right? His offense has got to be better. The offensive line's got to be better. I don't think the passing game looked all that bad on early. Honestly, I thought they converted some big third downs, Don. We haven't
I
talked
agree
about
with
that.
you.
Jacob Gill and Reese Vanderzee, they came in. I don't think we had a single drop. Jarrett Bowie had a nice gain for a nice catch for a first down.
That was the play I was talking about when Bowie missed by about half a yard.
And
The
he,
first
by the way,
down.
I think it was a bad call. If you go
It
back,
was, but
he had
that was the call.
Yeah, it was the call. But Don, what were your reaction? What was your reaction to the passing game early? Even though the numbers weren't necessarily there, they were moving the chains. Iowa was winning on time of possession through that first quarter.
Even at the half, I was not disappointed in our passing game. I was disappointed in our running game.
I agree.
But I made the comment, Cade's playing very well.
You
He
did.
played well in the first half. He made a lot of good throws. He took some shots, but he kept hanging in there and throwing. We made some nice catches. At half, it looked like if the running game could get untracked, we had a chance. But it never really got untracked.
Now, let me make this very clear, real quick, Ryan. Let me make this very clear, too, that there was one play in that first quarter, and that was on the first drive of the game, that if Cade makes a good throw out of the pocket, rolling right, he did a nice job escaping the pocket. That's a 35-plus gain. And frankly, if he hits Caden Weegan in stride, Weegan may go to the end zone on that one. Mm-hmm. So that was a big miss early. That I can't even state how big of a miss that was. It changed the complexion of things. When you look back and you're like, wow, at halftime it was 7-0. How does that change things? No, maybe Ohio State responds with a touchdown like they did. Okay, it's 7-7. I just think that's so different than a goose egg offensively at halftime. So that miss, not that it came down to one play, but that miss was a big one because Caden Weegan was wide open, and Cade McNamara should have been able to make that pass. He had no pressure. He'd rolled out of the pocket and evaded pressure. That was a really bad miss. Ryan?
That might be the only ball he wished he had back in the first half.
I'll just say one good point of today was it looked like they finally were using Luke Lachey as part of the plan. I thought he had a nice game. It was good that they were at least using him. I do think, especially with this team, you got to get guys in space, maybe some design plays, little short passes to Caleb Johnson to get him in space. And also, Caleb Brown, who I don't even think played. They underutilized Jacob Gill. He was doing real well in the first half, and then I think they forgot he was on the team. And lastly, I'm just going to say, I hate to say it, but Kirk is the common denominator in all of this, and his offenses are just flat out too poor, and he has not been competitive against real good teams. He can still beat the middle of the pack per se, and the lower echelon of the Big Ten for sure. But we got to get back to the point where we can at least be competitive with the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Penn States, and not lose and embarrass ourselves on national television yet again. So,
another way, talking about self-examination, another way to analyze where we are is to ask the question this way, Corey. Do we belong more with those teams that are ranked in the top 20 or top 10? Or do we belong more with all those other teams that we've been able to beat, if only by a few points? We clearly belong more with the ones we've been beating.
Yeah, I was thinking about that pre-show, Don, because it's almost like Iowa has established, and we'll see what happens this year, because the rest of the schedule, the last 8 games on the schedule, 7 games, are so winnable. And I think they may be favored in every game. They could be. We'll see. I don't know how much this loss affects how Vegas and the people that make those decisions, how that affects their beliefs in Iowa. But yeah. I look at where Iowa, the ladder, so to speak, or the totem pole, kind of what you're describing, and it's almost like Iowa's built a little tier of their own, right? Like they've established themselves as basically better than everybody but the top tier.
Well, let's say it this way. If the experts had to put us in one group or the other, which group would they put us in?
I know, but Iowa consistently beats everybody in that second tier that you're talking about, Don. They consistently beat everybody.
But by the thinnest of margins, we're at the top of that group. That's where we are.
We're at the top of that group, but they beat everybody last year with Deacon Bacon Hill. So, like, I'm just saying that's the consistency's there. They did it 3 years ago with Spencer Petras at quarterback where they won 10 games.
But here's my point. Where is the big divide? The big divide is ahead of us, not behind us.
I agree.
In terms
100%.
of ranking.
100%. And that's why I'm so disappointed in the rushing attack because, and again, I don't know that I blame Caleb Johnson. I think he deserves a share of the blame, just like he deserves a good share of the credit when they've looked really good on the ground. But I'm so disappointed in the rushing attack because the offense, although the passing game has not come along, and I made the bold prediction preseason that it would take until October, possibly after the Ohio State game, for that passing game to really look substantially better. And I am bullish on that take. I'm sticking with that take. I actually thought they looked better through much of the game today, but I don't think this Ohio State defense is just too good, too talented for the game to really showcase a ton of progress from the passing game. I think we'll see progress next week against Washington, but nevertheless, we hoped and expected that this rushing attack led by a very veteran offensive line, I mean, at a minimum, to give Caleb Johnson a 100-yard day, and the guy's been popping off for 150, 200. And, it took some garbage yards late for him to even get to 86 yards for the game. And Don, how much do you we talked about the seeming improvement from the passing game in that first half. I guess devil's advocate might say, Don, that because Ohio State was loading up to stop the run, even though Iowa's ran the ball effectively against loaded fronts to this point in the season, when you get up against an Ohio State loaded front, you're going to have to pass out of it. What do you say to people that say, hey, the passing game isn't good enough to pass out of it in those situations, and so we're doomed to fail against the great teams? Because that's the perception, I think, from some people, is you can't expect Caleb Johnson and this offensive line to deal with that many people with this elite of a talented group.
Well, my concern about the way that today played out, we talk about loaded fronts, Corey, but to be honest with you, they weren't all loaded. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't as if they were entirely committed to stopping the run.
Okay.
And they weren't playing that much out of their normal defensive scheme.
Well, if that's the case, then there should be even more blame on the offensive line, because
correct.
That's even more concerning if that's the
case.
case.
You go back and look at the tackles, most of those tackles were made by the front seven or the front six, whatever the case might be. The safeties didn't make that many, and we didn't get far enough to give them a chance to make a tackle.
What I'm taking from you here, Don, is there probably weren't as many opportunities to hit deep balls down the field. Those front guys just had to block better. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Well, interesting stuff. It'll be a good one to look back on tape. DC Hawkeye, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for the therapy session, Corey and Coach. And at least Army won today. Navy and Army both looking stellar to this point in the season. Historic stuff from both of those programs. Lemansky, thank you for the super chat. I'm mobile quarterbacking kills us against ranked mobile quarterbacking kills us against ranked opponents. God bless our
immobile quarterback. Yeah.
Or immobile quarterbacking. I gotcha. Immobile quarterbacking. Yeah, and I don't think Will Howard is. I mean, he's a decent runner, but I had a debate with a couple people last night about this. Like, he is an average at best runner. He's not some above average runner. He's fine. He's okay. But that's one thing that we can talk about. We haven't evaluated or talked about Cade's evaluation from today. I haven't seen him run. It feels like since week 1, Don.
Right.
I'm curious to see what you think, because I know Tim Lester talked about his performance against Minnesota and how he was encouraged. I know you said you were pleasantly surprised by how he played in the first half. He turns the ball over 3 times in the second half. Part of that's offensive line breaking down, but you got to protect the ball better. How do you evaluate Cade overall today?
Well, I think he was a little bit of a victim of circumstance in the second half. The interception. Let's talk about the interception. And even Danielson made the comment. You might recall the ball was tipped at the line of scrimmage, right?
Right.
But the truth is, correct me if I'm wrong.
Decision. The pass was not there either way.
If the flag, though, is defensive holding, it doesn't matter whether the ball got tipped or not. and they could have easily flagged the guy for defensive holding. Go back and look at it. He had a hold of our freshman receiver. Our guy got mugged at the line of scrimmage. Incidentally, the word's out on that. The only way to counter, all you got to do to counter the freshman receiver is just mug the guy at the line of scrimmage, because he won't be able to get off the ball. And it's a ball that shouldn't have been thrown, but it could have very easily been defensive holding. He held the guy. He held our guy. He did. But you're on the road, you're not likely to get that call. So
What did you think?
Anyway, well, first off, at the very least, I don't know what Cade was trying to do. Maybe that was meant to be a back shoulder fade. I don't know. The fact that the ball got tipped, we can't really tell where the ball was intended to go. It fell quite a bit short, of course.
How do you tip a back shoulder fade?
Well, Cade's not that tall, and the guy did a pretty good job. First off, he wasn't that far away, so if he gets his hands up and he's already in our backfield, yeah, it's entirely possible he'll get a piece of the ball. The ball was tipped. It was clearly tipped.
Second straight game where Cade McNamara fails to surpass 100 yards through the air. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We've got Andrew Miller with us. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I was going to touch just on the interception there. It's exactly what I was going to hopefully bring up. It was a very confusing drive to throw an interception to me. It was a good drive down the field. They were plugging along, and I believe it was Lachey had two catches there. 3rd and 8 came really clutch in, and then on a 1st and 10 gets another like 10, 11 yards there. But we're down 21 points in the 3rd quarter with 4 minutes left, and we're passing an 8-yard out route. I don't understand why we're not going for the end zone. Like, it's 1st and 10. Like, we have 19 minutes left in the game. I just can't understand why we just continually go for the 0 to 9 yard passes. I heard a stat before the game. I didn't check to see if it was correct or not, but 56% of our passes have been between the 0 to 9 yard for completions or something like that this season for Cade.
Right.
I just would like to see some enthusiasm from the Hawkeyes when we're facing an opponent like Ohio State versus Minnesota. I think we can get away with a lot more against Minnesota, but Ohio State has the talent to prevent us from doing what we want to. So I think the coaching needs to adjust to that talent. But it just seems to happen just like last year. But that's what I wanted to talk about, was that interception. I just didn't understand why we're going for 8 yards on a 1st and 10, down 21 with, and we're almost in the red zone. Like, it was just depressing. But
Don, do you have a response to that?
I'm trying to find the play. Here it is. Yeah, we were 1st and 10 on the plus 24. That's when the interception was thrown. It's a little bit on. Was it 14 or 21 at the time? I'm not sure.
It was 21-0. We had just turned it over, and I was feeling confident. I was like, maybe if we can get this drive in, we'll hold them, maybe turn it into a game in the last quarter. I've had some hope this season.
Well, I made the comment when it was 14-0 and they had a short field. I said the game's over, effectively over, even if it's only a field goal, because 17, as you know, Corey, is the magic number, right? Requires 3 scores. So any kind of score was going to pretty much doom us to a loss, I would say. Of course, it ended up being a touchdown. But then to follow the touchdown, we, as you mentioned, as the caller mentioned, put together a fairly legitimate drive. Here's some plays on the drive. Let me find them here. Yeah, 3rd and 8, wide stick to Lachey. Great second effort, gains the 1st down. Caleb Johnson then runs through the tackle, the DB tackle, the safety tackle, for a gain of 28. Lachey hooks up for a gain of 13. Now all of a sudden we got 1st down on the plus 24, and here comes the INT. So it's just unfortunate. You would have thought the way we normally play, we're already in the red zone. I'm sorry, we're on the plus 24, almost in the red zone. Wouldn't you expect on first down on the 24 that we'd run the ball? Because that's historically what we do. And I realize they, in general, stopped our running game. But as we've already discussed, so much of our running game is feast or famine. Either we go for 2 or we go for 62.
Why is that, Don? Why is that?
Well, we just have a hard time clearing the box. And if we clear the box, sometimes the race is on, especially if it's man free and the free safety is the only available tackler. Any number of free safeties have underestimated Caleb's speed.
And I do agree with you. That was blatant pass interference. It was 8 yards, and then he goes for the out route. And
there's a difference.
Holding.
Holding
He was
is
holding on
defined.
to him, and then Vanderzee, I think he tried to make the cut, and he just kind of tossed him over whenever he had the momentum. So it was just an unfortunate play there. I don't blame Cade for the interception. I just don't know what we're doing with the play call.
Well, I kind of blame him for the interception because I don't know that it was there regardless. Just because he's getting held he's getting held. Sometimes you go through your progression. I mean, I know if it's a fade, right? That's sometimes
I believe it was, as I recall, it was press coverage, right? The guy was up on Cade at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, he was playing up. I think Jacob Gill was maybe open. Couple 8 yards on the right side of the field, but it's hard to tell. The whole time Cade could see him covered. That's all I know. If he was looking over there.
Well, Cade wishes he had it back, of course.
Oh yeah, it's just a confusing time when I turn on the TV and I see Vanderbilt beating Alabama 40-35 with 2 minutes left, and I had to watch a good Iowa team lose like that to Ohio State again.
Yeah.
Andrew, we appreciate you calling in, sir.
I appreciate you guys. Keep the show up. It's an amazing therapy session after these Iowa games I've watched for many years now. So I appreciate what you both do and the time and effort you both put into the show. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right. A couple things here. First of all, Kevin Downey, he got this question in real early, and then we're going to get to our next caller. He says, I'd love to know what the furthest pass attempt has been by McNamara this year. I'm betting it's not more than 25 yards. That's not true.
The Hail Mary was.
Well, that's not just that. He threw the ball on the Caleb Brown go route, which was underthrown. Frankly, the throw to Caden Weegan today, which was incomplete, was more than 25 yards. And they also, let's give Tim Lester credit. It's not like he didn't try to get a couple of shots. They tried to go flea flicker. Jacob Gill couldn't release along the boundary. Talk about that play for a moment, Don. We haven't seen a flea flicker at Iowa in years.
Well, I'm glad to see it. Let me find it here. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, as we say. Help me out here, Corey. What part of the game was that? Do you remember?
I can tell you which quarter it was in. That was in the second quarter. I think late second quarter.
Yeah. So we're 7-0. Here it is. We just got through with Higgins play the game on defense. Higgins causes the fumble and recovers the fumble. What a great play on his part. And the goat on that play was Jeremiah Smith, the freshman phenom. Maybe that's one of his few bad plays of the day. But they threw the quick convoy to him. Higgins with a great job of forcing the fumble and recovering the fumble. And I think it's probably maybe a first down play right after, I think. Pitch back to quarterback, falls incomplete. Well played by Ohio State. One reason it was well played, it was man coverage. So the defender really didn't have any idea what was going on in the backfield. He's focused on his man. And, yeah, he's there with him. So we really have no chance with that. I can't remember. He just threw the ball beyond everyone, didn't he? That's what happened on that play. Is that right?
So, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe he's simply trying to throw it away. I suspect that's what he's trying to do.
And it looked like it could have been there, Don, but Gill just could not get off his guy.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a nice recovery by that outside DB.
I like the call because you got to try to do something. You got to try to find a way to generate a cheap score.
Right. Absolutely. And I said that going into the game, Don. My big key in this game, I know it was different than yours, but my big key going into the game was find a way to create a big play or two in the passing game. Well, hindsight, they weren't able to do that. They tried a couple of times, maybe could have tried a few more times. I still think they're too predictable on first down. I just do. I know they've mixed up what run plays they go with on first down. I'd like to see a little more play action on early down situations. And I understand they're trying to give themselves second and medium, third and short to pass, but I just think you get a little monotonous there, Coach.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's not forget too. Here's something that comes to mind for me. Correct me if I'm wrong. We didn't run a single fly sweep today. And Ohio State ran one for good yardage. I believe it was Jeremiah Smith again, wasn't it? Second half, they ran a fly sweep when they gained on that thing. You remember the play, Corey?
I do not.
Well, it was a little bit later in the game, I think. Can't find it. Got too many notes. Anyway, you get my drift. Let's try more things.
Yeah.
Can't find it. Maybe it was first half. Yeah, it was. Second quarter. Well, fly sweep by Jeremiah Smith, 14 yards. So you're making the same point I'm making. Doesn't a fly sweep have a chance? Because you don't often hand the ball to a motion guy. They ran it one time for 14 yards, realizing a lot of our running plays didn't work. I'll say it this way. I wouldn't have been critical of us for calling a fly sweep, even if it does get hit in the head, because at least it's a different play other than some of the others that have not worked. Right? You got to keep searching.
Correct.
Maybe at some point you'll find something that counts, that's worthwhile, and you get to run it not once but twice.
All right, we're going to get to our callers on our phone line. We want to welcome a friend over from HawkeyeReport.com. It's Tom Kakert, who is with us live from Columbus. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hopefully I'm not too dark. I'm in sort of a dark room. So
we see you and we appreciate you taking the time and glad you made it out there safely and hope you make it safe back. Tom, fresh off press conference with Kirk, can you kind of give us, first of all, an idea of Kirk's demeanor after a pretty thorough beating at the hands of the Buckeyes?
I think he was okay with things, but it wasn't okay with the result, but he was not angry or anything. And he knew that the quarterback questions were coming about potentially making a change at quarterback. And he basically shot those down right away and just said, there's no controversy. I knew you guys would ask. Because of the way Brendan played, that it would come up. And he basically said, Cade's improving, Cade's getting better. And he gave examples of how he's getting better delivering the football and processing things. So in his world, he said, basically, we'll continue to evaluate things as we always do. But there's no change at quarterback offing at this point.
I don't think that's even close to being the biggest issue. So, and I've been one of the people in the past that have been critical of Kirk for not making a change at quarterback. I have been on the record, and Don, you've been on the same horse, I think, at times. I'd like to see Brendan Sullivan in different spots more, but sure. I'm not an advocate for benching Cade McNamara, and I do think Cade played pretty well in that first half. Tom, how did he kind of explain how things came unraveled in that third quarter?
What's the turnovers? I mean, you just give them turnovers and short fields, and that's how it unravels. When you're +2 in the first half and you're within 7, and then you get your doors blown off in the second half because you gave them 21 points off of turnovers. That's the story of the game right there. Simple as it can be is, and I did ask Cade about the pass that was ruled a fumble, and he was like, well, it's hard to tell. He was trying to get it out of there, and it's, he said he was trying to throw it, but it just, however it hits the ball, it just doesn't. You don't know if it's going to go correctly, if that makes any sense. Or it look like that. We also asked him about the 4th and 1 play that I thought was, thought that was a mistake by Kirk. I know his thinking, and his thinking is it's 4th and 1. It's at midfield. It's a 7-0 game. Just play smart and punt it there. He said that on the fake punt, he was watching and he saw that the linebackers from Ohio State creeped up towards the line of scrimmage. And that's what spooked him and got him to bail out and call the timeout and essentially give up on the fake punt. But boy, I go back to one of his regrets in coaching that, when I did a 25th or I think it was 20th or 25th anniversary interview with Kirk, and I asked him about games that he regrets. And the 2009 Ohio State game was one of them, where he, instead of trying to go for it late in the game and try to win it or tie it or win the game late in a tie game, and he just kind of played to overtime. He regretted that later, and I think he's going to regret that one too. I just figure, you're a huge underdog, and what do you got to lose going for it from that, 16 inches away? Even leaving your offense out there. I know they're really good, but take a shot. And I don't think anybody would have been mad if they came up short. I think everybody would have thought, well, at least you're trying. That's just my view.
So, Tom, would you have brought? I'm going to ask you the question, a football question. Would you have brought, after showing the fake punt, would you have brought the offense back out?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have. Yeah. Why not? You got one of the best. You've got one of the best running backs in the country. Or just bring in Sullivan for that one play, which is what I've kind of advocated for. If you're going to use him on the goal line package, why not use him on 4th and short in a situation like that? Because he gives you a dimension, as we saw in that 30-yard run. He gives you a dimension that Cade doesn't have. Cade can't give you a 30-yard run. He just can't. But Brendan can do that.
Yeah, Corey, you bring up a good point. It's not as if our only option was either to run the fake punt or to punt.
Right.
We took the time out. We could have simply decided, let's go. Let's go for it.
Yeah.
Let's line up and let's go.
And I don't think any Iowa fan would have been upset by that decision. They wouldn't have said, boy, Kirk, why are you being so aggressive? When have you ever heard a fan say, I'm mad that you were too aggressive? They don't get upset by that. You just give it a shot.
More often criticized for being too conservative.
Yeah, being way too conservative. So that's just my view.
To point out the other side of the coin, let's not forget, normally when we pooch punt out near midfield, they do start their drive on the -5 yard line. Yeah. In that case, the ball, of course, bounded into the end zone. They started on I'm sorry, that was the shank, wasn't it?
That was the shank. That was the really bad. That was a 22-yard punt by.
Yeah, even worse than a touchback. It was a shank.
Yeah, and it was.
When does Kirk Ferentz ever care what the fans? I mean, I get what you're saying, Tom, but Kirk's not concerned with the fans' criticism, anyways, right? So
no, he's not.
His philosophy is risk averse. You're up 7-0 or whatever. You're down 7-0. Excuse me. In that situation, our best shot at making it a first down on 4th and short was a fake punt. And frankly, at the time, I was back and forth, Tom, because the offensive line was not getting a push. So I understand why you're hesitant in that situation, but I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing. They had an opportunity in that first quarter, and they punted on 4th and inside of 1, right, Tom?
It was 4th and 2, 4th and 3, something like that. Yeah. Had an opportunity.
Tom, excuse me. The stat here that everybody's talking about, and I don't know if this was brought up today, but this is Iowa's numbers against ranked opponents since the beginning of last year. They've been outscored 127-7. And you could argue it's really like 127-0 because, today's touchdown kind of came in garbage time. Was that brought up to Kirk at all today?
No, mainly because they scored. So it was just sort of like, okay, what are we talking about here? So we didn't bring it up. Had they been shut out, it would have been brought up. It would have been brought up for sure. Because everybody until Caleb scored that touchdown, they had not scored a touchdown on offense since the Michigan game against a top 20 25 opponent since the Michigan game, the end of the Michigan game in 2022, October 1st. So basically 2 years they've gone without scoring an offense, because the only other score was the Joe Evans scoop and score here.
Yeah, that's disturbing, right? That's more than just bad. That's disturbing, isn't it? 127-7.
I'll say this though, they haven't played a lot of ranked opponents, but when they have, they've just got dusted. They've got slaughtered. Yeah, it's been good.
Here's another way
Michigan
to
team.
ask: when is the last time we beat a ranked opponent?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
2021, the Penn State game. Beating
that's
number.
what I'm guessing. That's what I'm guessing it was. Yeah, that's my guess.
That's sad. That's really Don. Anything else? I want to make this a short night for Tom, but Don, anything for Coach Kakert? Coach Kakert, anything for Coach Kakert, Don?
I ain't coaching
I know what
anybody.
my question is. I got a question.
Sure.
What happened to Caleb Brown?
He has a soft tissue injury.
Oh boy.
Leg soft tissue injury. So he is out. Edison Ostrenga was in some sort of sling kind of thing when we saw him. I think Ethan Hurkett will be fine. So those were really the only. Kirk jinxed himself because he said this week, the medical meeting was really short and we don't have a lot of injuries right now, basically, and guys are getting healthy, and he jinxed himself. So Caleb, I don't know how long Caleb's going to be out. I don't think he really didn't give a prognosis on it, but soft tissue, you can be out a week. You can be out like Seth Anderson. You can end up being out, for 4 weeks.
That does remind me of a really early play in the game where Cade took a real shot. There might have been a flag on that play, but maybe not in Columbus, Ohio.
That's not going to be in Columbus. They're not
You
going to
remember
give
you remember the hit, though?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Right there in front of the referee. He's looking right at it and didn't do a thing.
Nope, he did not. He did not.
Anything notable to take away? By the way, just for everybody knows, Vanderbilt has upset Alabama 40-35. The Commodores are now 1-60 all time against AP top 5 opponents. So that is big college football.
Biggest win in Vanderbilt school history.
I would think so. Got to be close. Oh well.
Gonna burn Nashville's burning to the ground tonight, guys.
And it's 1 week after Bama beat Georgia, right?
Yeah. College football.
Yeah.
God bless it. Love it. Love it.
They always used to remind them, now don't get the big head. We got another game next week. You better be ready.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe saw that Heisman Trophy just walk out the door.
That's going to be
Vanderbilt doesn't help.
Yeah, the college football, the SEC race and the college football playoff race is going to be an interesting one this year without Saban. And we knew that heading in, but I don't know that we knew that after what happened with Bama and Georgia last week. So anyways, Tom, safe travels back home.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Hopefully we talk to you.
Talk to you.
I think we'll talk to you on better terms next week after a win against Washington. We better hope so.
Yes. Yes. Thanks for having me on, guys. Coach, good to see you. Corey, good to see you too.
Take care.
Tom Kakert, HawkeyeReport.com. Be sure to check out his stuff and his team stuff over at On3, HawkeyeReport.com. I over LA, thank you for the super chat. OSU, too much for the Hawkeyes, loaded with talent. The Horseshoe is a house of horrors. For us, only Iowa coach with success against OSU was Evie. And that takes us back quite a number of years, and I think Don's going to take some exception to that.
I take a little offense to that because last time I checked, we went over there and beat them a couple of times, and we also beat them in Kinnick.
Yep. What years? Do you remember what years you guys went on the road and won?
87 and 91 for sure were both wins. That might be it. Maybe just twice. But we didn't play over there every other year either. You know, everybody wonders why Kirk never won there. Well, he hadn't been there that many times. I think today was his 7th trip.
Yeah. Let's go to our phone line. We got a caller on our Iowa Smokehouse line who's been waiting on hold forever. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
This is Jeff. How are you doing?
Good, Jeff. How are you?
Good. Coach, one thing I've noticed, it seems like when the offense does get into a rhythm, whether it's by sending receivers across the middle, it seems like it's one of those things that we only do for a couple times a game and then we get away from it. Is there anything in the play calling that really shows that we are adverse to having success?
Well, I don't know specifically is your question when we throw with some success, why don't we keep throwing? I'm not sure what your question really relates to.
Because we've sent receivers across the middle for the first time, which is nice to see this year after not doing it in a while. And it seems like with some young receivers, with Gill and Vanderzee, that we have those receivers that can do something now. And it just seems like once we have some success, we go right back to running right away. I'd just like to get your opinion on the.
Yeah, I can see why you say that. If we run the ball, just for the sake of numbers, if we run the ball on 8 consecutive plays, is there anything wrong with throwing the ball on 6 consecutive plays? Maybe that's what you're saying. Even if we've had some success with pass, we maybe go away from it for no apparent reason. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. And at least with Lester, we're seeing those plays with receivers now, and it's great to see it, but it still seems like sometimes we get into Kirk's old mentality of just don't let the offense screw it up.
Right.
Well, I'll say
here's a good example. When you're talking about 3rd down and 8, they knew we were likely to throw. We still throw, and it's caught by Gill. It was a nice throw. It was a good catch, plus 22. It was an explosive play early in the game. Score was 7-zip at the time.
And then it seemed like
matter of fact, that's right after their touchdown.
Downfield.
I'm sorry?
But it just seems like, and after that, I know they tried going downfield a few more times, but it just seems like the plays that tend to work, or the schemes that tend to work, it just seems like we get away from them way too fast. I was always under the impression that if they can't stop it, then don't help them. Keep doing it until whatever is working, do that until they stop it.
And Don, do you agree that they're getting a little too predictable with? I mean, I'd like to know the percentage of plays that they run on first down. It's got to be close to 90%.
It was every play in the first half. Every first down in the first half was a run.
Well, it wasn't much different in the second. I mean, I'd like to look at the numbers, Don, because don't you think that if it's up where I think it is, probably in the 80s, don't you think that's too predictable on first down, even if you're a run-first offense? Even if you have a really good rushing attack?
Well, here's one frustration I got. Let's say we are 80% run. If that's the case, some of that 20% pass should be play action and try to get something big. You follow me?
Yeah.
If we were only 20%, I wouldn't mind it if more of them were designed to try to hit a home run.
But they're not.
They're not.
They're more
You're
concerned.
Right. In general, they're not.
It's almost like we're scared to death of 2nd and 10. That's kind of what I feel like. As long as we can, even get a couple of yards, we just are scared to death of being at 2nd and 10, potentially 3rd and 10. And I understand you don't want those long yardage situations, and I don't know how much of that is Kirk, how much of that is Tim. I'd have to think it's Tim. We've talked about the extent to which a coach may dictate pass versus run to his coordinator, but
I don't think Kirk's going into the game saying, "Listen, Tim, I want to run the ball 80% on first down." I don't think that happens.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if we do run it 80% on first down, it's not because Kirk insisted on it. You follow me? I mean, he wants Tim to call a conservative game. He wants us to play to our strengths. That's going to give you a pretty high percentage of run. Incidentally, Corey, I don't think it's 80%. It seems like it is, but maybe it's not that high. I don't know what it is. I've never bothered to chart it. It's pretty high, I'll admit that.
Anything else, caller?
Just, Coach, it's so nice to have somebody with your expertise on the program to give us a different perspective from just fans venting. So it's nice to have your insight and your expertise on this show. And Corey, you love the show.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
All right, let's truck along here. We've got another caller on our Iowa Smokehouse line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
Trent.
Hey, Trent.
Hey, Corey. Hey, Coach. How you guys
That's
doing?
it.
So here's my frustration, and Coach and Corey, fact check me if you want. I hope you do, because I want to be accurate here. I'm 38 years old, so when I really started watching Iowa football was the end of Hayden's time, probably his last 2 years as coach, and then ever since Ferentz has taken over.
Okay.
Here's my frustration with all this is that from 2002, when Brad Banks took over, to 2004, so a 3-year span consistently, Iowa finished in the top 10. So now we've given up 127 points and scored a garbage touchdown against a ranked team in the last, 4 games?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what's got to give? Like, Iowa fan, like, I get it. 9-10 wins. Most programs strive for that every year. I think Iowa fans that are my age, around my generation, we know, we've seen it. You expect more than a 35-7 ass kicking in Columbus. I'm sorry. I don't care how talented they look on paper. That second half was a disaster. If Cade McNamara starts as quarterback after this game, guys, when does something give?
I don't think Cade was that bad today. Don, I really don't think he was that bad today.
I thought he played a very good first half.
He played a very good first half, and he's got to protect the ball better in that third quarter. But I'll give Kirk credit today. If Sullivan's in the game, I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever.
Yeah, we had protection issues on a couple of plays. He's a little bit of a victim of circumstance.
Now,
He really was.
And let me just make this clear, Trent. I'm not saying you're wrong that it would be nice to see Sullivan, or maybe Sullivan's even the better option. I've been advocating for that for a long time. But I'm just saying today, I thought the bigger issues were offensive line not being able to effectively create holes and space for Jazz Patterson and Caleb Johnson. And you can't possibly expect this Iowa passing attack to open things up for the run game. It's got to start with the run. That's just how they're built. And they've done that to this point, and you can't expect them to pivot against Ohio State and all of a sudden pass to open up the run. I think the offensive line failed them more than anything in this game.
Let's not forget, too, that pass protection was a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Pass protection was an issue as well, and that comes back to the offensive line.
Right.
Perfect. I don't disagree with anything either one of you just said. We used to back. What I'm getting at, guys, is from 2002 to 2004, we were considered the bullies of the Big Ten. We did whatever we wanted on offense with our offensive line, and you're saying it's a weak point tonight. I agree. That's what I'm getting at, guys. I don't care where you point the blame. Is it Cade? Is it the O-line? Is it Caleb? Is it lack of receivers? Is it I don't know what it is anymore. I'm just telling you, I have seen Iowa sustain greatness for 3 straight years. And why can't we get back there?
And you're talking about 02, 03, and 04.
Correct, Coach.
Yeah. Well, one reason, to be honest with you, we had a quarterback back then that could extend plays, right?
Well, that's not I mean, go back to 2008, 2009, 2010. They were competitive against the best teams those years. They beat Penn State in 08, 09, and 10. They played Ohio State to overtime in the shoe with a backup quarterback, a freshman backup quarterback in 09 with a Rose Bowl chance on the line. They beat Georgia Tech in an Orange Bowl. I mean, there were others. I agree with you, caller. And like I said, I'm sure I'm going to get destroyed in the chat because I made the statement that I don't think Cade was all that bad today. I just don't. But I agree with you wholeheartedly that it's embarrassing where this team is at. And I haven't focused in on, as it relates to competing against the best of the best. And I have not focused in or honed in on that aspect of Iowa's struggles of late, because I've kind of attributed those issues to primarily be the offensive woes. And I still think in large part that's where it's at. Tim Lester's 5 games into his tenure as Iowa's offensive coordinator. This is their first real test. Like they got tested against Iowa State and they lost, but there's no comparing Ohio State and Iowa State right now. So I'm not saying you excuse Tim Lester for his shortcomings today, but we all knew this was going to be a project. They were climbing out of a deep, deep sewer on offense. And so I would think that if they can return and consistently get more balanced production out of the offense, like they did back in 08 to 10, from 2002 to 2004, and even back into the 2015, even 16, they weren't great in 16. I get it. But, even into the Nate Stanley era, they were more competitive against the best teams. I think when you get more balance on offense, which is going to take more time with Tim Lester as the OC, then hopefully they stop laying these big eggs against the best teams. But I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, guys. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. The new college football era is you make the playoffs, or I really think it's just a bust of a season. I even think if Iowa runs the table, I don't think they get in. I don't think they deserve to be in, quite frankly.
They may not deserve to. They may not deserve to be in. But I said this before the game. If they run the table, they're probably in. And you want to know why? Because if they run the table, which that means they go 8-1 in the Big Ten, there's a decent chance they get to Indy. The tiebreaker scenarios are all kind of murky. And if they get to Indy and win, which would happen based on the statement running the table, then they'd be 11-2 with a really good win in Indy. Now, do I think they're going to win in Indy? No. But I still think they've got a pretty good shot at getting to Indy because of the schedule. Anybody that doubts me, just look at the schedule. They have a decent shot still at getting to Indianapolis, whether they deserve Indy or not. The schedules are not made even, especially this year.
I don't disagree with that. You're right, but I'm just saying, okay, would you rather see them go to the playoffs again and probably get embarrassed, or would you rather see them play a same caliber level team in a bowl game and get a win and say, well, we went 11-2 or whatever?
Yeah, well, that's a debate that will probably always forever be an Iowa football debate, because Iowa has been, they are the epitome of the in-between, right? The in-between type of team where they're better than, like we said earlier, they're better than almost everybody on the schedule, but the teams that they're not better than, there's a huge gap between them. So, Trent, we appreciate your call, sir, and I totally relate to your frustration.
All right. Hey, I appreciate everything you guys do. I'm not trying to be negative. This is just where I see the state of Iowa football right now, and it's disappointing because I know I've seen better. I lived through it. So, all right,
Absolutely.
guys, go Hawks. Hopefully next week they get the win against Washington, and yeah, go Hawks.
Thanks, Trent. Have a great night. I understand where he's coming from, Don. I'm sure you do as well. That level of frustration, because this is when you see these trends. I mean, 127-7. That's pretty demonstrative. That's pretty specific, right? And so it is what it is. But those are issues that this coaching staff will have to address, whether it's just a matter of the offense getting collectively better and more balanced. I think that's part of it. I don't know that the talent gap is widening between the Ohio States of the world and, the 5th or 6th best team in the conference. Because right now, like I said, based on where Iowa may finish, whether you think that they're deserving of that finish, based on the schedule, they're going to probably, unless the wheels come off, and they could. But Don, I think they're going to win. I think they're going to go at least, let's see, 5-2, more likely 6-1, and possibly, I won't be surprised if they go 7-0 against that schedule. Like, here's how I see it. Michigan State's crap. All right. They're junk right now. I really do think, I hate to say that. Northwestern pushed Indiana, but they've proven that they're not a very good football team this year. I think Maryland has proven that they often mail it in by the time we hit November. the toughest challenge on the schedule is Nebraska, right? That's still the toughest challenge. Wisconsin might be difficult, but both those games are at home. And then you get a Washington team next week that has proven to be vulnerable.
Can you give me an update on Washington? Aren't they playing right now or not? Is that a night game?
I can give you an update on Washington. Give me just a second here. Before we do that, Bob, thank you for reminding everybody. Please hit that thumbs up button. Hit the like button if you're here. It does help us in the algorithm. So right now, Washington and Michigan. Washington leading Michigan late in the first quarter, 7-0. And the only other active Big Ten game, USC and Minnesota, just getting underway. Actually, 0-0 late in the first in that one as well. Minnesota driving into the USC red zone. So we'll follow those games between with a couple of ranked opponents involved, Michigan and USC. Bob, thank you for that reminder. And Blake, thank you for the super chat. Let me just check to make sure Blake didn't mean to leave a comment here as well. I don't see one. Let's see. He says, I send empty super chat. I'm looking for a comment here, Blake. I don't see another one. So thank you for the super chat. It does mean a lot, regardless if you typed anything with it. So thank you for being here and for the super chat. And Midwest Storm Chasing. I'm disappointed we lost, but we seemed to be able to move the ball. Turnovers killed us. We had first downs. O-line just didn't do well. And I think that's, probably the biggest reason for concern right now. But at the same time, this offensive line had proven to this point that it can bully most teams around, Don, right? Even Iowa State. How many yards did Caleb Johnson get against Iowa State? He eclipsed the 150-yard mark, right? They had over 200 yards as a team against Iowa State. Now, they lost because they gave up a couple of big plays, and I thought play calling and a couple of the coaching blunders from Kirk in that game cost them. But Minnesota, they ran the ball really effective in the second half. They were just the problem to me in that third quarter. I kind of understand where Kirk was coming from playing conservative in the first half, only because Iowa's kind of looked like a second half team. They were behind against Troy, came back and won. They were behind against Minnesota on the road, came back and won. And maybe you could argue they've worn teams down with that offensive line and Caleb Johnson. But the problem becomes Ohio State gets the ball to start the second half. They score, and then all of a sudden you're down 2 scores, and it just becomes a bigger, I think the reliance on the run game kind of has to take a seat back to some extent, and you have to start looking at situational play calling with time and score. Not that you're forced into bad situations with 14-0 down early in the third, but boy, as Midwest Storm Chasing brings up, the turnovers just kill you. And it was really the one quarter. Fourth quarter is hard to evaluate because the snowball had already begun to run down the mountain at that point.
Yeah,
Mark.
The truth is, the comment that was made by the super chat, we seem to move the ball well. Well, if that's the case, how come we had 90 yards at the half?
Well, they moved the ball. They converted more third down. I think that's what he's saying. They actually kind of controlled the clock to some extent. They limited Ohio State possessions by converting third downs that we're not accustomed to seeing them convert. And they also converted them through the air. I thought there were some, like I said, very few drops, some good pass schemes, things that happened that we're not used to seeing on critical downs.
That's true.
But you're right. They got into that middle part of the field and even got Drew Stevens into field goal range once, and he narrowly missed that 51-yard field goal. They just could never. It almost reminded me of 2019 against Michigan on the road in Ann Arbor. You may not remember that game, Don, but that was a 10-3 loss. And the only difference was Michigan was not as explosive offensively as Ohio State is, but Iowa just could not get into scoring range. They'd get to midfield or maybe the 45-40, and they kept playing the field position game, but they could just never push the ball into scoring range. Very similar to what we saw from the Iowa offense in this first half today.
Yeah, let me talk for a minute about that 51-yard field goal attempt. Here's the sad aspect of that. I think, of course, there are 2 officials underneath the uprights. He hit the ball so well. It was 51 yards, and yet it flew above the left upright. And I think what they're coached to do, that official, of course, looking right up that upright, and if the ball crosses, any part of the ball crosses over that extended upright, it's real no good. The reality is, if the ball was kicked a little bit lower, I think it's entirely possible it would have carried off the upright and been good. We'll never know because it was beyond, above the upright.
Was it really above the upright when it crossed?
Yes, it was.
Wow, what a like, talk about a leg. Now I'm just curious. I know you're going to probably double
I know
down.
you're going to say it would have been good in 67.
Not good from 67, but it would have had the length of 67. And I go back to the last play against Iowa State. Do you say now that he should have at least gotten a shot from 68, 69 in that game?
I don't even want to revisit that. Yeah.
I think it's a fair question, Don. Mark,
It is.
thank you, Mark. Spencer Petras just threw a beautiful 58-yard touchdown pass against Boise State. So interesting to follow that game. I don't know what the score is. Boise State really good. They got a Heisman candidate in Ashton Genty. So thank you, Mark, for the super chat. And before we get to our next caller and the next segment here on the show, I want to take a quick moment to acknowledge our sponsor, Iowa Smokehouse. If you have not experienced how tasting is believing with this great Iowa company, log on to iowasmokehouse.com. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order. You can buy meat sticks, jerky, fresh, tender cuts of steak. You'll never need to go anywhere else for game day. Look at this array just in this picture. Mouth-watering stuff, great stuff. And boy, it is tasty. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order and get it sent right to your front door, courtesy of Iowa Smokehouse and their partnership with this show from the Hawkeye of the Storm and Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Also, our good friend Brad Van Meter down in Des Moines. He is a part of the State Farm family. Give Brad a call for a free quote on whatever type of insurance you're looking for. 515-256-6480. 515-256-6480. Or visit him online at bradvanmeter.com. Our RTI Threads player of the game today. I had a hard time with this one, Don. Ultimately, I went with Jay Higgins because
Good choice.
14 tackles, 7 solo, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, recovered that fumble. I was particularly impressed with the series of events that led to the forced fumble and the fumble recovery, because the play before, the Ohio State back breaks a Higgins tackle. What does Higgins do the very next play? He forces a fumble and then gets right back up and grabs that fumble, gets on the ball.
Yeah, it's rare when you see him miss a tackle. Of course, that's a strong running back, as we discussed before the game. But he was mad at himself, I'm sure, for missing a tackle, because he doesn't miss many.
Absolutely. Good stuff out of Jay Higgins. And again, he is our RTI Threads player of the game. And speaking of RTI Threads, go ahead, Don. Do you have something to add there?
I have one comment. We have a guy that posted on the chat. I won't mention his name, but he says the field goal left of upright by 1 foot did not go over upright. I think what he's looking at, they took a different angle of the kick, but the angle they took was not from behind the kicker. It looked wide at that point, but it was not. You go back and look at the shot from the other end zone, that ball goes over the upright, not outside of it. The second angle, the camera was in a different place. At that angle, it looked like it was wide. But go back and look at the original video behind the kicker, and the ball clearly goes right over the left upright.
And that was Drew Stevens' first miss of the year. He's been perfect to this point. Unfortunate because he's got a huge leg, and that was so close. Not that it would have made much of a difference, probably. I don't know that you can say it would have made much of a difference, but unfortunate, the miss from 51. Shop RTI Threads, folks, and shop the official merchandise lines of Aaron Graves, Jacob Gill, Carson Shire, and Zach Lutmer. We saw Carson lay a big hit in the fourth quarter on special teams action. He's going to have a shot next year once Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson graduate and lead the program officially. Shop all of these great athletes and their brands at rtithreads.com. That's www.rtithreads.com. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We have got OS for Hawks with us. OS for Hawks, welcome.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
We're doing good. How are you, sir?
I'm just going to say one thing. I agree with Coach Don on 99.99% of the time. You have to look at the replay. I think you're wrong on the field goal. I'm sorry, my friend.
You go back and look. That second angle is a different angle.
Well, I haven't looked. I have it recorded. I could actually bring it up now, but I don't want to do that while we're talking. Yeah.
Please do. Go back and look at the original angle from behind the kicker.
Yeah. All
and
right.
then you can clearly see that's a different angle.
I will do that. My biggest takeaway
Not
for
my
the
first
day.
rodeo.
No, I know it's not. I like I said, I agree with you at 99.99% of the time. Anyway, I think the biggest thing today for Iowa is we got beat on both sides of the ball in the trenches.
Right.
We got beat on the defensive line got beat, and the offensive line didn't play up to what we needed to win the game. I noticed a couple times in the first half, especially, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but I noticed Graves getting blown off the line on 2 or 3 different plays. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is I wanted to ask a question about a particular play. Early in the third quarter, that first long pass, it wasn't a touchdown, went up the right sideline. Jamari Harris had coverage, and then Quinn Schulte was the safety over the top, and then he got tackled on about the 3-yard line. My particular question on that is, it looked to me like Jamari Harris almost gave up. The announcer said that it was like a double coverage, but Schulte did not look like he was in any kind of position to actually, quote unquote, play double coverage.
So what happened on the deep pass to Jeremiah Smith, Don?
Yeah.
Well, the way I saw it, I believe they were in what we call quarters coverage. In other words, the corner was in outside fourth coverage. The safety was in inside fourth coverage, I believe. And if you want to do there was a little confusion about who had the receiver. My thought at the time was really, if you wanted to assign fault, just my best guess, who knows for sure. The only guy that knows for sure, of course, would be Phil Parker and maybe those 2 players. But in my mind, it was more the fault of Schulte. I'm not sure of that, but that's just the impression I got. It looked like there was a little confusion. Okay, who's got him? In the end, neither one had him. You might argue that both of them should have been back there to contest the ball, and obviously neither one was. So,
yeah, I wasn't looking to lay any blame. I've just, like I said, I defer to you, Coach, because I know you have more expertise. It kind of looked to me like Harris thought he had some help behind and kind of gave up following, and then he didn't have the help, and then we cut.
I think Harris clearly thought he became Schulte's man at some point.
Yeah. Then I had another particular question too about one of Abuka's touchdowns. That was also, I think, in the third quarter. I'm having brain fade right now. Number 37 for Iowa. He's a backup linebacker, right?
Yeah, Fisher was beaten.
Yeah, Fisher. He cut it. But on the particular play I'm talking about, it looked like there was a last-second switch. Fisher blitzed, and Castro tried to get over to Abuka, and I think we got caught because, it was a touchdown, but Castro had no opportunity. I mean, Abuka is an awful good wide receiver, and you're expecting, safety to get over, and I just thought that it was a questionable
Was it the other way
defensive
around?
call.
Because I have in my notes, the guy beaten on the play was Fisher, not Castro.
Yeah, but Fisher actually
Castro-
jumped up and blitzed, and Castro had to fill on the play that I'm talking about.
That sounded like a different play. Because I've just simply got written down Fisher beaten for touchdown. Maybe not, but that's the way I saw it at that moment.
Abuka had 2 touchdowns. So are we talking about the
Right.
same touchdown?
No. The second touchdown, Fisher was covering there too, but he was in position. That touchdown was just a great throw and on time. I'm talking about. It looked like to me that Fisher came up, was over top of Abuka, and then he at the last second switched up to line and blitzed, and Castro had to fill in.
Well, the last touchdown, I do know this. The last touchdown, I have down Castro beaten by Abuka. Now 35-0.
Yep. Yeah. That's the one I'm talking about. But I guess what I'm asking is why. I don't know. Those are questions I had.
Well,
What?
it sounds like in one or both cases, some communication issues with at what point do you pressure the backfield? At what point do I know for sure that's my man? Again, just communication issues that we got to get worked out.
Yep. And then I had one other question. Smith's touchdown, the one-handed touchdown catch.
Right.
Is there not such a thing as offensive holding? Because
No.
yeah.
They're both grabbing each other.
Yeah, but Smith, when he went up with one hand, he had such a big handful of jersey. There's no way the defender could have gotten off the ground to try to. And I realize that there's no.
Then if you're
just,
Deshaun Lee, then don't engage or get off the ground first. I mean, like, to me, that's just a great receiver making a great play. I had no problem with the no call there, Don.
Yeah,
I didn't say I had a problem with the call. It seems like that's almost impossible to defend if you're going to allow, a defender to push off so like that in that situation. I only had one last thing I wanted to bring up. Late in the game, I saw something and it just made me realize, I think, why Caleb Johnson is such a better player this year than he has been in previous years. And it has to do with effort. There was a swing pass to the tight end to Lachey, and who was downfield blocking for Lachey downfield was Caleb Johnson after he came out of the backfield. And I just thought it just caught me as a big effort play, to help out somebody else. I mean, that's if he's not in the spotlight there, he's just doing something to help a teammate. And that's something that just caught me at that situation, because that's not something I think that I've seen before from Caleb. And I wanted to give props where props are due for having some effort. And again, gentlemen, I love your shows and I agree with other people. Being able to call in and talk to you guys sure helps. It puts a little bit of a salve on the wound
Sure.
after a game such as tonight. And I appreciate the content's great, Corey. I really appreciate what you guys do. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the call. Thank you, Sam, for reminding everybody to hit the like. Please hit the like button, right, Don? Just slide down, hit the like button. Very simple. Very simple.
And for that matter, if you haven't subscribed, please do so.
Absolutely. Got to get to 10,000 by season's end. And I know things tend to slow down when you lose a game, and they kind of did here on the channel after that Iowa State loss. I get it, and you're in a bye week, but better times are ahead. And I want to address a couple comments here in the chat. First of all, Kevin, I love you, Kevin. Say no chance they go 7-0. No chance. I am not predicting at this point that they go 7-0. But I think they will probably go 6-1. And they may go 7-0. But to say there's no chance, there's a chance, a decent chance, right, Don, that they're favored in every game left on the schedule. They were 20-point underdogs today.
There's absolutely a chance we'll go 7-0. And for that matter, Corey, a few hours ago, there was a chance we go 8-0.
Well,
right? There was a chance, slim chance.
But a realistic chance they go 7-0, Don, because there's a good chance that they're favored in every other game. I love how people are like, why are you bringing up the playoff and the Big Ten championship game? I'm just laying it out how it is. I'm not the one who made the schedule. I'm simply saying, if you do the math and look at everybody else's schedule and how the recent history with Iowa teams, even Iowa teams that have no offense, not even talking about an Iowa team that has a run game, even though it didn't look good today against an elite defense, they win games they're supposed to win more often than not. They have got a very favorable schedule. They play a Washington team who's down. They play a UCLA team who's down. They play a Wisconsin team who's down. They play a Northwestern team that's down. And they play a Maryland team that typically fizzles late. And then they finish with a Black Friday game against Nebraska. Could they lose a couple in there? Sure. But there's also a chance they go 7-0. If they go 7-0, they are 8-1, which means they'll likely be they'll be in a tiebreaker scenario at that point, unless some other teams lose a bunch, and then maybe they get in outright. But that's just how it is. That's not saying I think they're deserving of it or they're deserving of a playoff spot. I'm simply just saying how the math works out. This is the race for the Big Ten title is not an invitational. It's based on your total Big Ten record, and not all records are created equal because the schedules aren't created equal. You can't when you have 18 teams in the conference.
And this is a good time, Corey, to brag on our coaches, because what you're saying is we very seldom beat ourselves.
And give Iowa credit, they tend to bounce back after these types of losses. Whether you want to be mad about the 120-7, I understand being mad. They have not affected Iowa in the games following. Like when they go back and play teams of like skill level, they still end up beating those teams. At least they have recently. So I have no reason, Don, to think that they don't come back against Washington next week and win. Now, I will say this, Washington's beating Michigan right now 14-0. So that should get Iowa's attention. And if they beat Michigan, maybe we have a different vantage point. But to this point, I have not watched Washington today. What I have watched of Washington this season makes me think Iowa's going to be favored in that game and has a good chance of winning at home.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Washington has yet to play a Big Ten opponent in the Midwest. They won at home against Northwestern, right?
You could be right. I don't know. You could be right.
And now they have Michigan at home again.
Yeah.
I think. I don't think they've played a game yet in the Midwest or on the East Coast.
And it's an 11 a.m. game, Iowa time, 9 a.m. Washington time next Saturday. So that's notable. Mr. Mike, this is false information, fake news. Haven't beat a ranked team since 2019, 5 years of smoke and mirrors. They literally beat Penn State, who was in the top 3 in 2021. Just to make all this abundantly clear. And they didn't play a ranked team in 2020. So, I mean, let's just make sure we're dealing with facts here at the very least. They beat a top 3 team in 2021. Blake, thank you for the super chat. Iowa played to my expectations. 2 strip sacks. Pick that, in my opinion, was a PI on Ohio State. Holding. No counters ran by Iowa in a run game that I noticed. Score should have been 10-21-ish, maybe 13-17. Iowa 21, Ohio State 28. Well, I will say this, a lot to pick apart there. I thought in that first quarter, almost everything bounced the wrong way for Iowa. You have the Ohio State first down that they were granted after being originally spotted short of the first down marker. I thought that was a bad overturn, frankly, Don. I thought to say that was conclusive that he made the line to gain was unfair. And then to spot Jarrett Bowie back behind the line to gain, when you look back at tape on that one, it clearly looks like he had possessed the ball at the line to gain. Cade not getting the roughing the passer penalty. I didn't want targeting, but when you throw your weight and don't attempt to take your weight off of the quarterback and you pile drive him, to me, that's a roughing penalty. And then you have the unfortunate thing with Kirk, sort of a self-inflicted blow with the fake punt that actually worked, but they got a timeout in, unfortunately, right before the snap was made. Don, what did you think of the officiating today? I know that wasn't the main storyline, but did you think it was fair officiating? I know you mentioned being in Columbus and not maybe always getting a fair whistle.
Well, early in the game, I wrote it down. I thought it was significant. Questionable spot on a pass to earn a first down for Ohio State. It appeared it was short, and then they said, oh, well, sure enough, they gave him the first down.
And what I have a problem with is if it was ruled a first down on the field, so be it. But again, I don't feel like these officials anymore are staying true to the rule that a review has to be conclusive for it to be overturned. I feel like we've kind of just let that by the wayside, and we're just basically saying, oh, what does it look like? But it's supposed to be, why don't we just get rid of that rule? If it doesn't have to be conclusive anymore, let's just get rid of the rule.
Yeah. Well, in the hard hit on Cade, as you mentioned, it doesn't mean that it's going to be resulting in an ejection. There's a thing called unnecessary roughness. And if you're pile driving a quarterback, maybe there is no helmet to helmet, but it's still unnecessary roughness. You're not going to get ejected, but it sure might turn into a foul.
and it would have been a big penalty. It would have been a 15-yard penalty and a big automatic first down for Iowa had it been called.
Right.
A Midwest Storm Chasing says Ohio State is an elite team, possible champions. We don't have the talent they do. Cade played as good as the O-line let him. Sully is more mobile, but I don't think he's the answer. So a pretty balanced take there. I still want to see more of Sullivan. I'll admit that. But I think we have to be balanced. And I know there's a lot of upset Iowa fans tonight. And we knew that was going to happen. That's the reality of the situation. But we have to have a degree of balance. And I don't think quarterback was even close to being the top issue today. There are not many quarterbacks that would have thrown for much more than 100 yards today against that Ohio State defense with the failures in pass pro and the lack of run game. That's my opinion. I just don't think there were many, because I don't think there were many plays that Cade left on the field. The one big one was the miss in Caden Weegen's direction, because that could have been not just a big completion, it could have been a touchdown, because Caden Weegen had some room on his defender.
Right, and that was very early in the game.
Our RTI Threads player of the game, I mentioned it earlier, Jay Higgins. Got to be proud of that guy who's going to have an NFL future, who does have an NFL future. 14 tackles, 7 of which were solo tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery. Although I do need to check the official stats, because these were unofficial at the time we posted this here on StreamYard. So I'll double check that, but he is our RTI Threads player of the game. Let's go to our next caller, who is on hold. Our Iowa Smokehouse line. We've got Tom waiting on hold. Tom, welcome.
Corey, Dawn, you guys do a great job. Dawn, you're awesome. I think Corey's just kind of your wingman carrying your suitcase. But anyway, my takes out of the game, what I seen today, Iowa's defense still looks stellar. Ohio State's defense looks stellar also. Iowa just does not have enough horses on offense. I mean, the defense this morning in the first half, you had a stopped 4th down play, you had 2 turnovers, and we got 0 points. The boys don't have enough horses on the offense. We haven't had a quarterback in years. Kate McNamara isn't the guy that's going to beat Ohio State. I'm not here to down them, but there's just not enough talent there. You take the 2 plays that we got burned on for touchdowns on defense. Abdul is a heck of an athlete. That's my take.
Abuka?
Yeah, Abuka.
Yeah, let's not lose sight of the fact it is entirely possible that Ohio State wins the national title this year. They're very good. We lost to a very good football team today.
And they were my preseason number 1. So they were my preseason number 1. And if we want to look at the bright side of all this, I know fans don't want to do that, just an hour and a half removed from a loss like this, but they were down just 7 points at halftime. I thought the defense was really good in the first half, Don. I thought the critical down offense was pretty good in the first half. They just couldn't take advantage. I mean, Tom brings up a great point, something we haven't talked about. You talk all the time, Don, about playing these great elite teams. You've got to win on turnovers. And they won on turnovers in the first half. And then you look at the scoreboard and you still got 0. To me, that's deflating. You're up 2-0 in turnovers, but you haven't gotten any headway on the scoreboard. That's frustrating. How debilitating, how deflating is that when you're an offense and you know your defense is giving it to you and you haven't been able to take advantage of it?
Well, obviously the offense was frustrated even at halftime because you're still down 7, even though the defense certainly played an outstanding first half. I know Ohio State made the comment, I believe, Ryan, they said this. He said, we had 200 yards at halftime. We turned the ball over a couple of times. We just got to eliminate our mistakes. That's how they looked at it, of course. And let's face it, if we were +2 at the end of the game, yeah, we'd have probably lost the game anyway. Maybe it was going to take +3. But we certainly weren't going to beat them if it was even. And in the end, was it officially even or not? I don't even know where it finished.
Oh, well,
we lost up +2 in short order, didn't we, in the third quarter there?
Well, 2 fumbles lost and an interception. So
I think we're -1 on the day.
Yeah, -1.
Well, that'll get you beat for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, +2 kept him in the game, right?
Yeah.
+2 kept him in the game is all it did. And then
And
-1.
we could say with great confidence if we were +4 at the end of the game, Yeah, we'd have still been in the game then too. Maybe we'd have won the game. We'll never know.
Maybe.
But +4 is hard to get.
Well, if I recall on these games, I mean, it's just the turnovers, giving them, coming out and giving them the ball on the 20-yard line was just the beginning of the end. The defense, I'm sorry, you can't expect the defense to stop Ohio State every time just with a 20-yard field. And I think the defense is better than I expected, or is better than what maybe I was anticipating. I mean, they played them excellent in the first half. Yeah, they got beat on a couple plays, but I mean, the offense just can't. I mean, I'm not here to. We're okay when we're playing teams like us, but when we're up against them athletic teams, we just don't have the athleticism to keep up. And we don't have room for error on the other side on our defense to give up a play to be able to win the game. But, well, I was just going to give you a call. Corey, the reason you picked Ohio State was because of Mark Rogers.
You think I would have picked Iowa to win at Ohio State?
Well, you sure wasn't going to pick Kentucky to win the national title. That would have given DeReal just too much to flume on.
Voice of college football, don't you?
Yeah.
I had Iowa losing by 2 scores. So
I
had actually Iowa against the spread, but I had them losing by 2 scores. So 13 points, I think, prediction.
It's going to be fun to listen to the show tonight and listen to all them Alabama fans.
Yeah, should be an active night over at the Voice of College Football. Thank you for calling in. We appreciate it.
Bye.
Doug, thank you for the super chat. Favorite Hawkeye football team of all time was 04. No hope after starting 2-2, won 7 straight games with their 4th-string running back, lost to Arizona State and Michigan. That's a combined near 50 points, right? And the 2 losses there, then ran the table. Tate to Holloway at the end of that year in the Capital One Bowl. Thank you for those memories in the super chat, Doug. Askabum. AG performed well, I thought. AG. Who's
AG?
AG. I don't know who AG is. I don't know what that means. Somebody will have to explain. Mark, thank you for the super chat. Spencer Petras strikes again. A beautiful 75-yard touchdown pass this time. I hope, if Mark's going to give us a super chat every time he scores, I hope Spencer Petras is setting records at Utah State this year. Thank you, Mark, for the super chat. Do appreciate it.
Is Mark stating he wishes that Spencer was still playing for Iowa? Is that what he's saying?
Well, I don't, but maybe Mark is. Doug, thank you for the super chat. The team Iowa played today will win the national title. OSU will win it all. I do think Ohio State will go out and beat Oregon next week. I was impressed with Ohio State today. Not that I wasn't impressed with Oregon last night. I think Michigan State's just not very good. And I don't think Oregon's really been – they looked somewhat vulnerable first couple weeks of the season. I think Ohio State goes on the road and gets a big win against Eugene against the Ducks next week. That's my bold prediction. Thank you for the super chat, Doug. And Angela, thank you for the super chat. The commentators mentioned in the beginning that Ohio State has paid their team $22 million this year. How do you compete with that? Well, first of all, I did hear that comment, and I thought it was maybe how do I put this? I don't really like that comment made by the commentators, Don, whoever it was that made it. Might have been Brad Nessler that made the comment, because I don't know that that's dealing in fact. I don't know where he got that information from. Would he have gotten that from somebody on the team? I mean, that just seemed like without a source, an odd thing to say on the television, that Ohio State spent $22 million to create the roster it did this year. Did you find that statement odd from a CBS guy?
I got this on good authority from a head coach in FBS football. He made the statement to me, and he'll remain nameless, but he made the statement to me, what you hear about or read about is not necessarily true. Would it be a shocker if a young man, age 20, might have exaggerated what his compensation is? You can't believe what you hear. That's what he was saying.
So you
So
do some,
I have no idea what the compensation is.
you don't work on CBS, but you do some work for ESPN, well, for the Missouri Valley and
Right.
your TV crews. Do you feel like that's a fair statement to make on a national broadcast?
No.
Yeah, I agree. There were a couple things that Brad Nessler said today that I kind of made me question, but Brad's been in the game a long, long time. Let's go back to our call-in line. We've got Corey on our Iowa Smokehouse line. Corey, welcome.
You caught me by surprise here.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Yeah, you crack open that beer, big boy. I know you want to. Go right ahead.
So it's my fault we lost. I was
Okay.
at my son's lacrosse game, and I didn't get to my first swarm beer until the beginning of the fourth quarter, and then we scored. So it's my fault. I take full responsibility.
So what you're saying is Ohio State should have put the twos in earlier, is what you're saying. That's what you're saying, right?
So, okay, I'm gonna pass
You
around.
brought up something earlier in the chat, Corey. What was it that you wanted addressed? It wasn't Sullivan. What was it about?
Oh, I don't know if I did. I mean, I was just
you
talking
brought
about Bama.
No, you brought up something earlier in the chat that I don't know what it was. I'm not going to go find it, but
No, but really, the game of football, in my opinion, is 75% won at the line of scrimmage. And what we dealt with today was an elite offensive and defensive line unit for Ohio State. And we've got to tip our hat to that team because I think that may be the best O-line in the country and the best D-line in the country. That said, I want to go on record as blaming 7 points of it on Cooper DeJean because I think he could have stopped those 2 touchdowns if he would have come back. So Cooper, if you're out there, you own, 8 points because there would have been 2 field goals instead of 2 touchdowns. So Cooper owes us 8 points of financial whatever. Anyway, secondly, that play doesn't get made by, there might be 4 wide receivers in the country that make those plays on us. So you pay millions of dollars for those special plays. You also pay millions of dollars for those special throws. Those were elite throws and elite catches. If you don't want to lose to those, then you need to drop some money in the jar and contribute to pull in elite players. But I don't see that as realistic right now. We're not gonna pull those guys in. But what's the big difference here? When has the offensive line performed to Iowa's standard? I think it hasn't happened since Doyle left. I mean, that's the elephant in the room here, is that our strength and conditioning program was elite. We got more out of 3-star guys than anyone in the world when Doyle was here. And everything has dropped off. We're out of the picture. We have not been relevant in offensive line play since Doyle left. And so I think that's where
I don't think it's fair to say they're not relevant this year based on one bad performance against Ohio State because they've been really good every other game. So,
but consistently, we were elite, and we have not been.
Were they ever though? Were they ever elite? And were they ever elite against the best? Like they weren't always elite under Chris Doyle. I mean, 2019 was 2019, 18 and 19 were miserable years up front at times.
Well, obviously, you've got the age of your line, you've got the maturation level, but what I'm saying is, I think we need to look at, what are we doing? If you look, he overdid it. And we got to the point where we had the kidney rhabdomyolysis. We had guys in the hospital. So they were overtraining. But my point is, we've gone through different offensive coordinators. We've gone through different offensive line coaches. But we have not seen the consistent offensive line play at elite levels since it was during his tenure as the strength and conditioning coach. And I think that it was natural. I said this, that I knew we would fall off. This was prior to Doyle leaving. I knew that our offensive line performance would fall off after that rhabdomyolysis event. When you get all those guys in the hospital, they had to reel back. You can't overdo it. Now you knew there'd be an overcorrection, err on the side of caution. But that's how Iowa football took down the big boys, is we controlled the line of scrimmage. And we haven't been able to do that. And I'm just accepting of it and I'm saying against elite teams. Now, for the rest of the season, Corey, I appreciate your positivity. I see us losing one game, but for the rest of the season, I think we can compete and I think we can win. But I'm saying against elite teams, I think against elite teams, it's time to accept that our O-line may not be elite. And I think that, and this is funny because you've been loyal to Cade, and now here I am turning against Cade. I'm saying in very recent weeks, I think if you've got an inferior game at the line of scrimmage, then you need something that can give you a chance. And I know Sullivan was in against the twos, but Marco Lainez, when he went in during the bowl game and was running the ball, it's another element. It's another threat. They've got to spread out their attention. I just think when you don't have, when you can't control the line of scrimmage, you've got to give another element for them to spread out their attention to. And so they've got to divide their attention to more than just, narrowing it down.
I don't disagree with that. I'm so tired of the quarterback controversy talks because there have been so many years, Corey, and so many weeks where I go on this show over the last 4 years and I say, I don't know if the right guy's playing. And I don't know if the right guy's playing right now. But I'm watching better quarterback play than I've seen since 2019. So that's why I kind of maybe seem a little defensive of Cade. I would like to see Brennan Sullivan. I've said that, but I just don't think that was the biggest issue today. I don't think it was the biggest issue against Iowa State, although he wasn't as good against Iowa State as he has been these last couple of weeks. I'm so tired of the quarterback stuff. And he is better than Deacon Hill was at Iowa, than Spencer Petras was, than Padilla, than Hogan. Then I know some of those guys we didn't see very much, but he is better than those guys.
Yeah, it's what we're going to see. Here's what I want to see, and I'll be there, is the Nebraska game. Because you've got Raiola over there, and you've got, I think that on the line of scrimmage, I expect that Nebraska may be better than us on the line of scrimmage. Their defensive line is nasty.
They might be better. They might be a better team, Corey, but they come to Kinnick, and that's the only reason I said. And they may lose to Nebraska at Kinnick. They could lose to Wisconsin at Kinnick. Maybe they lose to Washington at Kinnick. There's losable games in the schedule. Don't get me wrong.
But if they win, I believe it will be because of some elite players. You remember Palmer, the receiver that burned us? Well, I think it's going to be Raiola making those special throws and throwing those 50-50 balls. We played great defense today. Schematically, We were in position, but it's a difference between an elite player and a solid player. And, you know, so my point is this: people need to stop throwing temper tantrums. When we lose to a team, Vegas knew it was coming. Everybody knew it was coming, except for the delusional that think we're going to go in to the horseshoe and beat Ohio State, who's going to probably win the national championship. So all the fire Kirk people, I think, need to select another team. And because Alabama lost to Vanderbilt, okay? What if those people go and root for Alabama? They'll be upset again because they lost to Vanderbilt. I think Iowa goes in and beats Vanderbilt, just the way Ferentz is and the way he plays the game.
But you can understand, Corey, why people are frustrated with the last 4 games being outscored 127-7 against ranked teams, right? You get that. That's not just that's not like a Vanderbilt beating Alabama, which is an historic single event. This is the last 2 years, they have literally went to the middle of the field and dropped a deuce, 4 different games.
Yeah, but I will say that I was in attendance of that Penn State game prior, which was 2020. You know, my dad's the best day of his life when in Kinnick, when we took number 3 versus number 4.
Right, but that was also 3 years ago. That was 4 seasons ago.
Well, yeah, okay. But
I'm just saying that was 2021. This is 2024.
Yeah, well, we recruit around, on average, our ranking is 40 to 45. So if you want to bash Ferentz for not being able to recruit, if you think that that's a legitimate argument, then go ahead and go with that argument. But Ferentz has add up all the stars, and, you know, Joe Paterno used to vote Hayden Fry as coach of the year every year. And the reason he said, was because Iowa has access to, like, within a 2-hour drive of Iowa City, they have access to like 4 million people. And Joe Paterno has access within a 2-hour drive of like 20 million people. And it's simple mathematics that's 5 times as many players that you have access to. So, and people can say, oh, I don't want to hear your excuses and all this. You Kirk apologist. Well, go out then and you take that team and you go beat Ohio State. And when you do it, you can run your mouths. But until then, I back Kirk Ferentz. I think he does it right. He does it clean, and he makes the biggest bang for all the bucks that we got. And if you don't like it, then start spending the bucks and get yourself a Swarm membership, and maybe we can pull in the Dylan Raiolas. We can get an elite quarterback. Okay, I think Cade is a shell of himself. If he wouldn't have experienced all these injuries, maybe we would have that. But I think that he's had to start all over. His throwing motion is even different. Cade is not throwing. If you watch the highlights when they showed him on CBS, his throwing motion was totally different. He's totally different player than he was. So we made the effort. We did the right thing. We went out and got Cade. But unfortunately, through injury, the odds went against us there. But my point is, it's not Kirk Ferentz's fault. He's a magician at doing the most with the least. If you want to hold him accountable for who he's got for strength and conditioning, if you think that's a legitimate argument.
Or hold him accountable for making his son the offensive coordinator for 7 years. We can hold him accountable for that too, correct?
But the offensive line was our limitation, in my opinion.
Yeah, but Brian Ferentz is a former offensive lineman.
Brian Ferentz wasn't coaching the offensive line when we had our poorest offensive performances, though. That
was under his watch, Corey. It was all under his watch as the OC, was it not, Don? Did you take some
a lot of input?
The thing is,
Hey, hold on a second. Don, is there something we haven't let you talk for a while, Don?
Yeah,
What do
I'm
you
sorry.
make of everything Corey's saying about, I understand where you're coming from, Corey, and you're very defensive of Kirk. And to a great extent, I do agree with you on a lot of what you're saying. The people that jump off the boat, with a rock tied to their ankle every time Iowa loses a game, that's just a tired narrative that's as old as Abashevsky himself. But Don, is there anything you want to say in response to Corey's gripes?
Brian, as the OC, would have a lot of input relating to how the offensive line is coached. As a former O-line coach, you can bet that he would. For that matter, of course, Kurt would have input also. So whoever the O-line coach was, you can bet that he valued their input. So indirectly, they had something to do with our O-line.
And let me just make something else clear. Philip brings this up in the chat, and he's the one saying it's not me, but he says Doyle got what he deserved. Y'all tripping. None of us know. None of us were there with some of the allegations against Doyle, but we can all agree that some of the allegations were extremely inappropriate, whether they were racially motivated or not. I'm not going to debate that, but what he did, you can quantify as bullying. And whether you want to say a lot of coaches do that or not, it doesn't make it right. So I'm not saying he wasn't made out to be the scapegoat, but he kind of built his own grave. He kind of dug his own grave is what I'm saying. So whether it's the Doyle thing or not, that was under Kirk's watch. He allowed it to go on. And whether the O-line was better under Doyle or not, they kind of dug their own grave is the way I look at it. And Raymond Brathwaite was working with Chris Doyle, not saying that he was going to be able to meet expectations at that position as well as Chris did, but Brathwaite was kind of his right-hand man. Right? Am I wrong on that? Why can't Raymond Brathwaite do as good of a job as Chris Doyle did?
I think that Doyle was probably holding people to very high accountability levels.
Probably.
And I think that, I just think he's probably able to push people farther and get more out of people. And we will never know the truth on that. At that point in time in history, it was not good for Iowa to have racial relations brought into question. And I think that we will never know the actual truth. My personal opinion is, I think that Doyle probably bullied every player on there. And if you parked in the coach's parking lot, he's going to destroy you for that. And there were probably selected people that parked in the coach's parking lot because they were desperate. They were running late to practice, and they parked there again. And they happened to be of a certain ethnicity, and he happened to just jump their bones about that at an extreme level, and they felt isolated and maybe targeted. And I think that a lot of misunderstanding can happen in this world. And I just think we'll never know the truth. And I'll also say this. I think that Iowa football has undergone a modernization from the old school Patriot way, hardcore accountability, to the, player friendly coaching methodologies a little bit, because they had to, because it was during that period of time in history when that was very sensitive, and it was the only option at that point. But I think that when that happens and you change from that hardcore, I'm going to call it the Patriot way, when you change away from that and you flip to another system, you're probably not going to be great at that new system and that new approach, and I think that there was caution, high levels of caution on behalf of this coaching staff at that point in time, because it was very sensitive at that point in time. But I just don't see and I'm naive, and I'm a Kirk Ferentz sappy or whatever you want to call it, but I do not believe that Kirk Ferentz would knowingly allow any racial inequity in his program. He doesn't have hatred in his heart. I believe he does have accountability. He's a believer of accountability. He's a believer of making it to the team meetings on time, parking where you're supposed to park, following the rules. And everybody's brought up in different environments. And some people are brought up in a really strict, tight environment. Others are brought up in a looser environment. And I think that some people came from those looser environments. They came to Iowa, and it was like they went into shock. And it was like, I'm being targeted. Well, no, you're always in trouble because you always are in violation of the rules, that maybe you weren't used to having all of these rules before. So I think that's what happened, is there were people that were not used to this really strict regiment, the Patriot way, or whatever you want to call it. And I think it was a shock to people's systems. And once that happened, it's like, once someone gets labeled as, oh, I'm in trouble again, and I'm in trouble again, it's just like you end up fulfilling that. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you just end up becoming labeled as bad, and it just snowballs. That's the problem with, a Patriot way. But I'll just, again, I'll say this. 8 of those points in the game were elite level plays that you're not going to get those points unless you contribute to the swarm and you pay for elite players. Strength and conditioning. I think that Iowa can compete better with this D line of Ohio State. I think that our strength and conditioning has fallen off a little bit. I would say that's 7 points right there. I would also say the referees, because of the impact on the game and the momentum swings, I think they may own 7 points. And then Cooper DeJean owns 7 points because he should have come back. But it's not fire Ferentz unless you're delusional, in my opinion. It is, listen, we didn't play our best game. We played sloppy, and we paid for it. We would have probably gotten beaten by Illinois today if we'd have played Illinois, getting as sloppy as we did. And because of our O-line and Cade not protected, and Cade owns 7 points as well, because he's got to be able to tuck that, sense that pressure, tuck it, and get down. But bottom line, if you want to fire Ferentz, then I think, and I'll look anybody in the eye and think and let you know, I think you're a total moron. Ferentz does more with less. We get more bang for the buck out of our ranking of 40 to 45 in recruiting. Unless you think you can pull someone in here and ramp us up to the top 10 in recruiting, well, guess what? It takes money. So you better buck up, people.
Appreciate you calling in, sir, and I appreciate your perspective.
And I will be there next week.
Okay.
I'll be making the drive. My buddy's coming up from St. Louis.
Okay.
He hasn't been to a Kinnick since Hayden Fry, Michigan number 1, Iowa number 1, Michigan number 2. Rob Houtland, torn quad. Yep. But
well, just so you know, Erica's about to come on here and rip you, so I'm going to put her on next. Corey, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
You let Erica know that I love Kirk as much as she hates him. No, I love Kirk more than she hates him.
Ooh. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate the phone call. Let's before we get to our final few callers of the night, which include Erica. All right. Want to thank Askabum for that super chat. So AG equals Aaron Graves. So thank you, Askabum. Katie, Says, thanks for keeping us informed and entertained. Value coaches' expertise and experience. Always nice to hear those types of comments on a night like tonight, Don. Mark says, I always felt that Spencer threw long passes well. Iowa didn't. I will give him.
I've said that before.
Yeah, we've said that on this very show. Thank you, Mark. And Drew says, Hayden Fry would have never started McNamara over Sullivan. Do we know that, Don?
No, we don't. I don't know what Coach Fry would have done. He would have given them equal opportunity against equal competition. He would have done that.
And let's see, Ask a Bum. What this guy is trying to say is today's students are softer than a dinner roll. I agree. Look at the Jonathan Martin situation. Yeah, I mean, different. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I do appreciate the super chat, but if we're going to talk about the 2020 scandal and the Jonathan Martin incognito thing, we could be here all night and talk about that controversy, Don. I don't really want to open that can of worms tonight.
I don't even know who Jonathan Martin is. I can't remember.
The incognito Jonathan Martin hazing thing. I think it was it Buccaneers?
Oh.
Maybe 10 years ago or so.
Okay.
So, anyways, all right. We'll be right back, folks, with our final segment. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with our final segment with Coach Don Patterson. You're watching from the Hawkeye of the Storm.
Chasmium believes every young athlete deserves a shot at greatness. By making data analytics accessible and easy, they provide a new way for coaches and athletes to improve their game. Chasmium's digital scoring app, all-in-one stats, and chart software enable teams to quickly and easily find new ways to strategize and harness the power of data. Join Chasmium in revolutionizing the world of youth sports with tools that make a difference. Schedule a software demo or sign up today at chasmium.com. Chasmium, where sports technology sparks victory.
Appreciate Chasmium and their assistance in making this show happen. And of course, we also want to thank RTI Threads. If you've not seen their website, check it all out for authentic merchandise from the best Iowa football has to offer. That's the likes of Aaron Graves. Of course, Cooper DeJean, they still have his line. Zach Lutmer, a star of the future. Jacob Gill. And you can browse their awesome merchandise, their apparel, everything they have to offer, both men's and women's clothing available, as well as a bunch of other products, including golf balls, mugs. Go down the laundry list. Check it all out. This is their website, folks, rtithreads.com, and then scroll over to NIL Athletes. RTI Threads also has a partnership with Iowa Baseball, so you'll be directed to their Swarm Baseball apparel. Great way to support the Iowa athletes and a great way to support this show. Again, visit rtithreads.com for all of your NIL apparel and purchasing needs. All right, let's go back over to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We have got Erica, who's been on hold, and oh boy. This should be good, Erica. I'm not going to let you. Corey fell victim to a bit of a run-on sentence. It might have been the longest run-on sentence I've ever heard him give. I think it lasted several minutes.
That's talent right there. That's very special.
Yes, he was on his soapbox, and I don't blame him for that. But Erica, you go right ahead and express yourself.
Oh man, where can I start? There were so many gold nuggets in what caller Corey said. There was some really hot takes in there. First of all, I'll start by saying I actually do give money to the collective. So, caller Corey, you can't come after me for that. Also, I think caller Corey has a losing mentality, defeatist mentality. Part of the reason we don't improve and we don't get better is because of opinions like that. We're just little old Iowa all the time. We're never going to get better. We're never going to recruit anyone good, period. I mean, come on, what kind of garbage is that? The only reason we feel this way is because we want our team to get better. Is there something wrong with that?
No.
Come on. Like, why can't we be like a good top team? And it's like, why even make the playoffs at this point? Because all we're going to do is go in there and get embarrassed nationally again. It's really, really, it's frustrating. And then for caller Corey to be like, oh, I like Kirk more than Erica hates him. Like, what the hell is that? I don't hate Kirk Ferentz. I just think he's not a good head coach anymore. He hasn't grown with the game. He's old school. He's risk averse, and no one can argue the point that he's not too conservative. Because look at what happened on that, fake special teams trick that we tried to do. And what happens? The one time we actually tried to do something creative, Kirk calls a timeout. I mean, come on. That's garbage. No other head coach in America would have done that. I'm sorry. You can't be risk adverse and be competitive in this game.
Well, I think the worst part of that whole situation is the fact that the play even happened. I equated it earlier, Erica. You may have heard me bring this up, but I equated it to 2014 against Iowa State when Kirk called a timeout to ice the Iowa State kicker. The kicker misses the kick. Then they come back on the field and he makes the kick and wins the game for Iowa State. I kind of equated it to that. But I sort of agree with Tom Kakert earlier, brought up, the idea of, hey, okay, that sucked that we gave away the fake punt. But I think a lot of Iowa fans would have been just fine had they went out there and ran for the first down or had a different play in the playbook for the first down. It's all a matter of being aggressive. And
Kirk is scared to do it. He's scared to do that.
Well, I'll give him credit. He allowed that call to go onto the field. There's just something he didn't like.
Yeah, but why would you call it dead then? Like, I don't get it.
Well, Don, you explained this earlier, but tell us why Kirk would have stepped in like he did to call the timeout.
I think he expected an alignment. I'm sure it was one that they normally went with, where they were exposed for that particular fake. He mentioned the linebackers were up. He was convinced let's face it, it was that part of the field that you might run a fake. It was on your midfield, right?
Yeah.
So there's certainly a chance they were going to decide it was a fake somehow. And Kirk was convinced they were aware we're going to run a fake. The linebackers are creeping up. We're going to fall short. I'm going to take the timeout because I don't think the fake, if they'd given us the alignment I expected, we could run the fake. They gave us an alignment that I didn't expect. I better burn a timeout. That's what happened.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've seen way too much conservatism here, like with this team. It's ridiculous. And with a team like Ohio State, you have to take these risks if you want to win. Like, we don't have the players they do. How do you expect to have any chance of winning if you're not willing to take risks? Well, I said this last week on the show. Remember, I said, if we want to go in there and beat them, we need to have tricks up our sleeve. And we had a trick and we blew it because the head coach didn't trust his players.
They had more than one. I mean, like I said, they hadn't run a flea flicker in years, and they ran one, the pitch back to quarterback today, and it didn't work. So, I mean, I think I don't think we see those things if Brian Ferentz is calling the game. I mean, I think
Jared here is saying, okay, now you're just being a dead horse here too. Jared, how about you call in then? Don't be a keyboard warrior. Call in, for crying out loud, by all means. We want to hear your genius. No, I'm sorry. I just have zero tolerance for that people make comments and they don't call in. At least caller Corey had enough courage to call in.
True. He calls in a lot.
Come on. But anyway, I think
Drew,
also...
Real quick, let me address Drew. You skip my super chat, will not be donating anymore. If that's how you feel, that's fine. Drew, no one skipped your super chat. It's right here, and we were going to get to it, but we have a lot of things to get to on the show, so I appreciate your super chat. It's in the queue.
You did read it out. You did read it out, though. Remember, Coach commented he wasn't sure what Hayden Fry would have done. You did read it.
Is there another one here? Let's see if there's another one. No, there was not another one. So, yeah, you're right. I did address it. So, thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate that, Drew, but...
Now it's double appreciated. He should contribute another $5.
If he doesn't want to... Listen, if people don't want... it's not... I'm not going to beg people to give money. I'm past...
No, I'm being a little facetious here. Because...
I know.
Anyway, what I was going to say was also to go in there. I think caller Corey said something about, who expected to go in there and win. That, again, is a loser mentality. Okay. Why would you go in? Like, why even play games why even bother? Because if we know we're going to lose, like, why bother playing the game? We should just forfeit every game we think we're going to lose.
Well, I think it's fair. I think it's fair to question everything you're questioning, specifically with this game relating to being very conservative on 4th and short. I can explain why Kirk was probably as conservative as he was and needed a fake punt look in order to be willing to be aggressive because his line was not getting a push. And I think he probably expected his offensive line to be able to give him a push. That's my guess.
Yeah.
And the fact that they weren't able to, one could argue, maybe that means they should have been a little bit more reliant on the passing game. I brought up earlier, Erica, how I think they've gotten a little too predictable
Yeah, they
on
have.
first down run calls.
Yeah.
And
I thought that during the game too. Way too predictable. I mean, already this was a tall order, so why would you be predictable? And that's why I said last week, we need, passing, we need tricks, we need everything we can get in order to try to beat this team. I'm not saying I went in there necessarily thinking we would win, but frankly, after seeing that first half, I thought we had a darn good chance, actually. But then everything fell apart because Cade turned over the ball too much. I mean, this is Deacon Hill stuff. Like, what is this? And I'm also fed up because, people are saying that Kirk is leaving Cade in because of NIL. If that's the reason, okay, just because we gave him some NIL money, that is stupid.
That's not why. That's not why.
Being said, I would love to know the reason why we did.
Erica, you can ignore those comments because think about how loyal Kirk was to Spencer Petras. And Spencer Petras never got.
I think that was the wrong thing to do too. I don't agree with that either.
But I'm saying he was loyal to Spencer Petras, who we know was at Iowa for no reason related to NIL. Right. So that loyalty it's not just a thing with Cade McNamara. That's just how Kirk operates, whether you like it or not.
Again, though, in order to win today, we needed to go against our tendencies. We needed some not predictable play calling. We needed to see more of Sullivan out there. Like putting him in the very end like that is not gonna. We're not gonna come back from what was it at that point already 35, I think. We're not coming back from that. Like, why wouldn't you throw him in sooner?
Well, I think they took him out 35-0 not to ignite the offense, Don. I think they put Sullivan in there to protect Cade's health, right? 35-0 game's over. Frankly, I'm surprised Ohio State kept Will Howard and some of these first-team offensive players in the game as long as they did. That was strange to me. Why would you keep Will Howard in there up 35-7? I don't get that.
They probably wanted to, take it to us and keep taking it to us. I don't know, but I don't know. I have no idea how their coaching staff thinks because the way our coaching staff thinks is very, very different from others. That much I can tell you.
Yeah. But they did.
Anyway,
I give them credit for something. They did try a flea flicker. I wish they had taken a couple more exotic chances down the field. But sometimes it doesn't have to be something trickeration related, right, Don? It just has to be well orchestrated and well timed. And like we mentioned earlier, they had a kind of a broken play earlier in the game. They had a chance at a super explosive to Caden Weegan, and they just missed it. Like, they're not going to take tons of opportunities. They just got to execute the ones they do take.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that today.
They left a lot on the table. They really did.
They left a lot on the table. And they did move the ball into the mid-range area of the field, midfield area several times, and then just couldn't get past like the 40 several times. So that's frustrating, Don.
You might find this interesting, Corey. I did flash back on this fact, talking about the poor throw, the underthrown ball to Weegan on the flush. We actually used to practice flush situations simply to be sure that we gave ourselves the best chance to react in the right way. Those are even rehearsed in practice. Now, I don't know for a fact that they do that, but if they don't, they should, because it actually would behoove you to practice those situations, even if you can't control when they happen. You need to, you need to react properly in the flush situation itself. And maybe with more practice, maybe we do better with it. I don't know, but I would hope that they actually practice those situations too. Obviously, if you don't have a very mobile quarterback that doesn't do a great job extending plays, you might not need to practice it as much. But even then, I say it deserves some practice time.
And M. Finn says maybe don't try to run the fake up the middle. Well, the fake worked. So what's the point of this text?
It didn't always. It didn't work the whole time. It didn't work the whole time though. Early on, it didn't work as well. I don't think.
I suspect the fake was not even based on the alignment that we got.
We're talking about the fake punt, aren't we?
No, running. It says to run the fake up the middle, like running up the middle. That's what I understand that M-Fin means. M-Fin, yeah.
Well, he says maybe don't try to run the fake up the middle.
We're talking about the fake punt.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, he's
Correct.
talking about the fake punt. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's so.
We need new Kirk when he was on the hot seat because we were back.
He
Oh
was,
my.
he was never on the hot seat, but I understand everywhere you're coming from, Erica. And here's one more thing I'll add, and then if you got anything else before I let you go, I'll let you go off. But the deep shot to Weegan, which may have changed things, we won't know, right? We won't know. It's hindsight's 2020. But the deep shot to Weegan, I think part of that, Don, it's also fair for us to state is Cade is not a natural on the run thrower. He's not natural out of the pocket in general. He's not got the greatest escapability. He's okay. He's certainly better than Petrus and Deacon Hill, but he's just okay. And he's not real comfortable with his legs right now. Now, maybe part of that's injury related, but like CJ Beathard was really good throwing on the run, like really good throwing on the run. And I miss the days of CJ Beathard. And frankly, Nate Stanley was decent, even though he was kind of a statue. He could throw when he got out of the pocket. I remember a number of really impressive throws from Nate Stanley outside of the pocket. And that's one reason I'd like to see Brendan Sullivan, not just because of his ability to make yardage past the line of scrimmage, but his ability to throw once he's outside of the pocket. And that's an opportunity for a team that in some cases is limited with being able to create and draw up explosive passing plays, take advantage of a pocket that breaks down and a broken play where your receivers are, you talk about moving north and south in some cases. In Caden Weegan's situation, he moved back in the direction that Cade did and created space from the defender and had a big play. It was there. They didn't need to. I don't know what the play was initially. I have to go back and watch, but it was there. They just weren't able to get the ball to him. And that is a frustration. He's not right now. He doesn't look comfortable running. And week one, I thought he looked pretty comfortable, made a couple of plays, and I'm thinking, oh, he looks mobile. He's been very glued to the pocket since week one. And so that's a concern, and that's something you probably wouldn't have with Sullivan. Anything else, Erica?
Well, here's another thing I was going to say regarding opinions on Kirk. So can someone either in the chat or you guys or whatever, super chat, whatever, can someone explain to me why I wouldn't be upset about Kirk losing to Iowa State and letting everything fall apart? That's another reason for me that he has a strike against him. That was absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. I mean, we were dominating. And now look at Iowa State. They're going to the playoff because of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was well done. I talked up and down about some of the blunders in that game against Iowa State. And if they end up going 10-2, say for instance, and I know people are going to just go right back on their soapbox that Iowa doesn't deserve anything, so why are you talking about it? I'll talk about what I want. This is my show. So as it relates to the playoff conversation, if they win out and win the Big Ten title, they're in the playoff. Whether you think they have any business to being in that conversation, that's fine. 11-2 conference champions, well, they're automatically in anyways with a conference championship win. And 8-1 is probably good enough to at least get you into a tiebreak scenario for Indy. But if they go 10-2 and lose out in a tiebreak scenario and then lose out on the playoff because they had a bad loss, not a bad loss, but a blowout loss at Ohio State and then a home loss against Iowa State, we should all be looking back at the blunders against Iowa State and say they should have never been in that situation. They should have been 11-1. They were up 13-0, should have been up 17-0 or 21-0, and they blew it. That's what I will be looking back at season's end. Not the Ohio State loss, the Iowa State loss.
Yeah, that's just unacceptable. I'm sorry. Against, one of our biggest opponents at home, like, that's unacceptable. That is just absolutely unacceptable. I'm sorry. And I also said, by the way, the first team in that game with Iowa State, the first team that gets to 20 will win the game.
And
so
right.
I was right. I mean, not to toot my own horn or anything, but come on, like, that was absolutely a winnable game, and we just let it slip in, like, between our fingertips. Absolutely pathetic. And also, I'm tired of the excuse, like what Kirk said in his presser. I think it was this week, I think, where he's like, "Well, in case you haven't noticed, we were 10-2 last year." Oh my God! Was it this week or previous? I don't remember. Someone was
like 2 years ago. He said that.
No,
this week?
he said it this week too.
Okay, I guess I missed that.
Yeah, he said it.
I didn't hear that.
He said it.
Yeah.
So I'm just like,
This is I have a bold prediction. This is the last year they're going to get away with that. At one point, I said it was last year. I'll say it's or excuse me. I said last year that it'd be last year, and then I said it would be this year. This year's the last year because next season I don't know who they have in the schedule, but man, the schedule works out with the two West Coast teams they play in UCLA and Washington. Now I'm going to give everybody an update on Washington because I know this has been lighting up the chat. Washington leads Michigan right now, early third, 14-10, and USC is in a dogfight in Minneapolis. It's 10-10. That's a game to watch. We're gonna wrap up the show so Coach and I can watch these
that's
games.
crazy.
Anything else, Eric, before I let you slide?
Yeah, to go off my last point, Kai Beatty says it best. I don't understand why some people feel we should be okay with being mediocre because we have been for over a decade. I mean, that right there says everything you need to know. Why is it okay to be mediocre all the time? We're little old Iowa? Is that what it is? That's
Eric,
a defeatist attitude. I bet you money Hayden Fry would never say something like that or think that way. Am I right, Coach?
No comment.
No comment. Very
Erica,
politically
thank you
correct.
for the call, as always.
Thank you very much. You guys have a good night.
You too. All right. Super chat here. Want to get to from. We already got this one. Thank you, Askabum, for that super chat. And Blake says, please thank Drew for his super chat so he is not sad. Thank you, Blake. And thank you, Drew. Appreciate that. Thank you, Blake, for reminding us of that. Do appreciate the reminder. Maybe tongue-in-cheek there, but nevertheless. Askabum, brada bing, brada boom. Sorry, couldn't resist. Very good. Brilliant. Never heard that one before. I really haven't. Blake says, Don, why no counters tonight? Thank you, Blake.
That's a valid question. I don't know that we ran our counter. I don't believe we did. You heard me make the comment. Why not try a fly sweep? Try something else. So the two most obvious that come to mind are counter and a fly sweep. We didn't run either one.
Very interesting. And DC Hawkeye, question to Coach. How will they handle Kirk Ferentz's contract once he gets past 2025? He'll have less than 4 years left. Who would sign with Iowa? So typically recruits, it's in the recruiting stratosphere. They say a recruit wants to be guaranteed, 4 to 5 years of a head coaching contract, but he's already signed through the end of 29. So what do you think the next couple of years look like if Kirk sticks around as far as extensions are concerned?
Well, the question is, if we don't extend Kirk, how does that impact on recruiting? So there might be an argument to extend him. Obviously, him coaching to be until he's 74 aren't very high, I don't think, but I understand where players are coming from. We ran into this with Coach Fry in the late 90s. Recruitment openly state. I know Coach Fry's a great coach, but how can I expect him to be here when I'm done playing? They just didn't want to believe it at some point in time. And Kirk's dealing with some of that now, too, I'm sure.
Thank you, DC Hawkeye. I do appreciate that. As we continue through our final segment, as we recap Iowa's 35-7 loss to Ohio State, and we welcome, I believe, an Ohio State fan here. Yakov22 is on our Iowa Smokehouse line. How you doing, sir? You're muted. Let's try to get you unmuted. There we go, I think. No, we're still muted. Try again. One more time. There we go.
Hello, guys.
Yep, we got you, sir.
I was trying to mute a different one. I hit you guys. First of all, I want to say I haven't spoken to you guys this whole season yet, but I want you to know, not that you were thinking about it, but despite that fact, I've watched most of your shows. Just did a little quietly right here.
Really appreciate that, even though you're not an Iowa fan.
Right, I might not particularly be an Iowa fan, but I'm definitely a fan of both Corey and Coach. I think you guys have a great show. So I'm watching a football game right here and listen. I have this on here. I have the game on there. Actually, I was watching Iowa State and Baylor, 1914 and a half. As I'm sure you know.
I didn't see that one, but that's.
I did 1914 Iowa State.
Iowa State's up 19-14 at the half.
Okay.
And I thought I wanted to tell you guys that, first of all, I hope you guys have known it a few times I've called, or in Corey, I've been called Corey more. I'm not the bragging type. That's not what I'm mostly doing. Maybe sometimes with Michigan, I might feel a little inclination to do that if Ohio State were to win that game. Don't this game's over. That's not why I called it all. Of course, I'm happy with the win, but I didn't call you to tell you that. You already probably figured that. But I would say this, guys. Now, I know you already touched on it, but this is, of course, the first year of the 12-team playoff. I happen to think that obviously you have to win the rest of your games, and I think Iowa fans are all cheering to win every game. But you're also you need to see Ohio State and Iowa State win their respective conferences, either with 1 or 0 losses. And we don't know how this plays out with this, 2 losses yet. But I'd like to think if Iowa finishes the year at 10-2 and their 2 losses are to, we'll say 12-1, because I'm assuming they're both going to win their championship games with this 12-1 or 13-0 teams, it'd be hard for me to think that Iowa won't be in top 12 with that type of situation. They lost to 2 teams that won all or but one of their games.
Sure, but what wins do you
top
have?
4 sleeves?
What good wins do you have on the schedule, though? That's the problem. You don't have any good wins.
Obviously, I have to. Yeah.
But you don't have good wins. And by the way, Baylor now leads Iowa State early third, 21-19. So
maybe you're a little ahead of me. I'm streaming it.
I was going to say it's 21-19, very early third quarter, and that was interesting because that's a 2-3 Baylor team. Iowa State lost that game. They're out of the top 25.
That's not good for Iowa for them to
not good for
lose any game. Yeah. Neither one would. But I'm just saying, I'm trying to give some hope right now that we don't know how this goes. Yeah, I know. I hear what you're saying. You don't know where the wins are. The top wins would be, but obviously, I have to look at all these teams that are also going to be 10-2 at that point and see what they won. Also, I have to take a lot of analysis to start looking at all these.
And like I said, Yaakov, remember, because the other Iowa loss came out of conference, a 10-2 record would mean 8-1. So they 8-1 conference. So there's a decent chance they'd be going to Indy, and then they would either lose a third game or get a really good win that would guarantee their spot.
Right.
Anyways, you see what I'm saying? So it would all work out in Indy regardless. If they go 10-2, chances are they're in Indy, and it all gets and we probably know what would happen. I think it'd probably be better for Iowa not to go to Indy, and
that is weird. It's almost better to finish 10-2 and lose a tiebreaker and maybe sneak in at 10-12 anyway.
But these people that say Iowa isn't deserving of the playoffs, that's fine. I'm simply talking about resumes and what I think the committee will do. And I think 10-2 with this schedule puts you on the fringe if the losses are Iowa State and Ohio State. But it would have been nice if Iowa could have played closer against the Buckeyes today.
Yeah, that would have helped. The other thing I'll say about Iowa is, I forgot. I just had something interesting. Well, I don't know if it's interesting, but something that I thought would be interesting is that I thought, Coach. Now I'll say a little X and O thing here. The few times that some teams have moved the ball against Ohio State this year in the previous games have been to seam routes to the slot receiver. Same type of thing for tight ends and quarterback runs. I was concerned about that. I watched Ohio State. I watched some of the previous shows, and including with some former offensive lineman has his own similar type of show as you guys. And he said that he has some concerns that might be the type of thing I would be good at, although he didn't think Cade was the right runner. But the other 2 routes, maybe I didn't watch the game carefully, but did you see much of that?
One thing that was interesting today, it was obvious for the first time, I believe for the first time this season, Will Howard was a runner. They hadn't shown that he would run the ball all these other games.
First of all, I wouldn't call him a runner.
Guys, sorry, I meant to say he was concerned. He was concerned for us against the QB run. We've lost. Some of the previous games, other teams have won it. Had some nice plays, and the seam route to the receiver and to the slot receiver and to the tight end. I thought you guys might do a little bit more of that. Either one, first of all, those routes, but Cade's not a good runner. That's what I meant. But you guys, did I miss a lot of seam routes, or did it not happen?
Didn't happen.
Right.
I don't believe.
Right. The few teams have moved the ball against us. Again, obviously not a lot, but some. But you guys didn't do that. I was concerned about that. You didn't do what I think has been the most effective thing against Ohio State this season.
What did you think was the most effective thing against Ohio State?
QB runs.
Well, yeah, they don't have a mobile quarterback. Right now. They don't have a guy they trust to play.
And seam routes to the slot receiver or to the tight ends. I think you had one new tight end. I think you had nice. Didn't go back to it. But.
Not to kind of jump off of that, but Don, someone brought up earlier, Jacob Gill, hurt Ohio State a little bit early, and man, I like that kid. Were they honing in on him as the game went on? Why did we see very little to none of Jacob Gill in the second half?
It's a good question. There were certain plays that were for sure designed to be thrown his way. I'll give you an example. 3rd and 3, we motioned him to become an outside receiver. He ran a stop route. It was only a gain of 5, but it was a critical down. The drive continues. That was the end of the first quarter, right before the end of the first quarter. And there was another play earlier in the game. The 3rd and 8. That was an inside receiver over the ball, a little bit like a seam route.
Okay.
I think it was really what we call a dig, an in route. But the bottom line, it was 3rd and 8. We gained 22 yards.
Okay, so a couple, maybe, again, I only watched the game once and obviously don't have the eye that you have, Coach, of 40 years of coaching, the 2 years of middle school football. But, that's
and they did have a fence post in position to try to play it, but it was a nice throw by Cade, avoided the fence post defender, and it was a nice clean ball to Gill, and he did something with it even after the catch, gained 22.
Right, yeah, remember that play. Okay, so
22. We appreciate your call, sir, and
thank you, guys. And look at your schedule right now.
Very doable.
They should win 10-2.
Very doable.
Yeah, it's very doable. They should be 10-2.
Yeah,
thank you, guys. It's good to see you guys the first time this year. I love this time of year. We have crisp air. I don't know about in Iowa, but it's crisp. It's 58 degrees right now. We have that fall crisp air. It was a little overcast today. It was Big Ten football. I don't live in Columbus. I live closer to the Cleveland area, but it was that fall crisp air. I hope you guys are having a little bit of that in Iowa as well.
Well, it's getting hot here in the next couple of days, but it's going to cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. Yeah, summer's holding on.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Sir. Appreciate the call. Okay, so I'm going to run through here a couple of chats before we get to our next caller. Navy May, I like this. They're a running team, so maybe play the running quarterback. Yeah. Maybe a little. There's some truth to that, Don, right? There's a little bit of truth to that, I think.
Well, let's not forget. Let's go back to that Purdue game a couple of years ago where they played 3 quarterbacks, and they clearly had a different game plan depending on which one's in the game.
Yes.
It was effective. Maybe one guy had 8 snaps in the game, the other guy had 6, but they were 14 plays that contributed to the Purdue offense, no doubt about it.
Touchdown Iowa State. The Cyclones now up 26-21. Steve, our wide receivers are getting no separation. Dunker and Colby have problems. Well, let me just address the first part. Is that true, Don? Our wide receivers are getting no separation.
Well, they didn't have a lot of separation against Ohio State. I think that's true.
But they made a lot of catches when the ball was thrown their direction. You got to give Vanderzee credit, Bowie, Gill. Those guys made a fair amount of plays in the first half. And I think, that third quarter, things came unraveled quickly with turnovers on the first series. And I think 2 or 3 of those turnover ending drives. So how about this? Michael, stop making excuses. He's talking to me. Your facial expression shows it all. Come on. Call a spade, a heart, a heart. Good gravy. Call it right. No more hogwash.
I don't know if I can take seriously a guy named Michael Bubba Schultz.
Dude, Liberty, I'd like to be in the playoffs no matter the situation. See, that's the mindset of some people, and I have no problem with it. Everybody has a right to their own opinion. Some people say a trip to the playoffs is a trip to the playoffs, and I happen to agree. Retro Sports Vision, do you want to see Iowa in the playoffs? Yes. Do I think they'll win in Indy? No. Do I think they probably need to win in Indy to get in? Probably. Do I think they'll win in Indy? No. Do I think they may get to Indy? Possibly, because of the schedule. That's all there is to it. I'm not saying they're deserving of – they're not a top 12 team in the country right now. Hopefully the passing game really evolves and Ohio State proves to be the best team in the country, and this doesn't look so bad. Kevin, they will not go 7-0, Corey. Get over it. Lose to Nebraska at least. Boy, people putting me in my place tonight, Don. I just love it. They are just putting me in my place.
Well, better you than me.
Austin says, Coach, what's with all the tipped passes for McNamara?
Not very tall. Good defenders. Think about this. If a guy gets pretty good push into the backfield, when he extends himself to bat the ball down, his hand is not that far away from the football on release. So obviously, if he's on the line of scrimmage trying to jump up in the throwing lane, a little bit tougher, but the closer he gets to the quarterback, the less height he has to have.
So Carl must not follow Big Ten football because he says Raiola isn't at Nebraska yet. Well, he is, and he's the starter. So just want to clarify that. EA Monterey, thank you for this comment. Always need these, especially after a loss and a lot of angry fans. Coach Patterson's awesome. So are you, Corey. Thank you. You don't carry a suitcase for anyone. Love the content. You're both awesome. Thanks for the great content. Go Hawks. And Katie, thank you as well. Agree that the defense was strong in the first half. Appreciate Coach and Corey highlighting the bright spots of potential. Thank you for keeping us informed and entertained. Go Hawks. And how about this? This is kind of creepy. Michelle says Hy-Vee had free hamburgers today. So, Corey, is that why you have a Hy-Vee water bottle? I mean, how she realized this is a Hy-Vee water bottle. And the answer to your question is yes. Don, did you get your free burger, chips, and water from Hy-Vee today?
I'm among those 37% that didn't get the word.
I'm not giving Hy-Vee an advertising plug, but I'm just telling, yes, I went to Hy-Vee earlier today because they were free meat, free sandwiches. But the fact that Michelle could locate this is a little creepy, but we do appreciate you being here, Michelle. Lonnie says in the first half, Cade kept moving. Second half, moved up in the pocket, didn't get rid of the ball. Was his mobility questionable from all the hits he took? I think he's just not very – I just don't think he's very mobile. He's just not very mobile, especially coming off 2 serious leg injuries. And Destiny's Pirate says secondary was the Achilles heel. Second half it was. Could one player, Cooper DeJean, have flipped enough key plays to keep it competitive? Let's be honest, the D-line wasn't getting much pressure either.
I don't think Cooper would have made that much difference, simply because I don't think they would have targeted receivers toward Cooper. At that point, they would have gone after Harris.
And to be very clear, Troy, never once did I laugh at Howard last night. Again, fake news. You're spreading false information. What you're referring to is a conversation I had on the air with Mark Rogers. And all I asked is, after watching Kyle McCord throw 64 passes for Syracuse last night against UNLV, I asked the question, why did Ohio State push him out? Because I don't think there's much of a gap between him and Howard. I stand by that. I think McCord today probably would have had very similar results to Howard. He's less mobile than Howard, but the dude's got a heck of an arm, and he was a 5-star quarterback out of high school for a reason. Brett Mormon, can anyone say why the 2017 performance and dismantling of OSU was such an anomaly? That's a hard one to pin down, right, Don?
Well, it was 7 years ago. So
yeah, true. And the offense was different 2017, 18, and 19. It really took a big nosedive in 21. And really 2020 with the passing game. The run game was still good, but boy, 21 crapped out. Midwest Storm Chasing says, won't be able to join tonight. Maybe if you allow it, we can do a player-by-player pick 'em before the Washington game. Thank you, Coach and Corey. Sounds good. Midwest Storm Chasing, I'll be live with Mark on Tuesday. I don't know what your schedule is, but head over there and maybe we can arrange that. Do appreciate the super chat. BJ says, Don, would it have made more sense to go shotgun more and run more RPO in the game to keep the Buckeyes safeties from being so aggressive running towards the line of scrimmage?
Maybe. As I mentioned to you, Corey, if we did run the ball 80% on first down, one concern I have, the 20% that were passed, not enough of them are play action pass, because obviously if you're running the ball that much, play action should be really effective. So I hope we can find more and better ways to run play action pass, because that does give you a chance to hit. I don't know how prominent we're ever going to be with RPOs, but play action in general, of course, brings the linebackers up. You do have a chance to hit the ball in behind them sometimes.
And I'm assuming this is a person related to Luke Lachey, B. Lachey. So I'm assuming there's a relation there. Appreciate the comment. And it says, fun game today, even with the loss, on to the next Hawks. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach John Patterson. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey.
Lomansky, how you doing, sir?
The Three Musketeers rides again.
You're back. Where you been?
Well, you've got so many colorful callers, and I have to compliment you because this season I watched for Don's facial expressions and your facial expressions. And Dr. Don, this is your show too. You can say anything you want to, not just Corey. I want you to know that, Coach.
Good to know.
You're always behaved. Just so you know, and I won't be too long, it's 3 minutes in the third quarter. USC just scored, and they're out rushing Minnesota to my chagrin. I'm pretty upset about that.
And Michigan has taken the lead over Washington at 17-14 late third.
And the reason I don't call as much, you have such a colorful audience. Like, I think I'd like to stay at the bar with Erica till close, but I also stay at the bar with caller Corey till 1:30. So I compliment you on your eclectic and colorful following. It's getting really, really entertaining.
Well, we appreciate that, Lemansky. Whenever you're not around in the chat, at least people wonder where you are, myself included.
Well, I'm not as good as these other callers, but I really mean this. I was not too happy. I have 2 Cyclone friends I have to deal with every Saturday. And this loss hurt. I forgot all about this loss after watching your program. I'm on to next Saturday. I'm going to do a Hayden Fry, get it behind us. Let's go on to next Saturday. And Don, you should know that with Alabama's loss, they are carrying the goalpost down Main Street of Nashville, Tennessee.
Are they really?
Yes, they took the goalposts down. They took them out of the stadium. They're parading them down Nashville, Tennessee after beating Alabama.
Oh, that's great. By the way, let me just clarify something real quick. Michelle, I was joking when I said it was creepy, but the fact that you were able to realize that this is a Hy-Vee bottle is amazing to me. Anyways, go ahead, Lemansky. Gotta be careful what I say.
I think it's very, very creepy myself. But just so people are watching you both.
They're watching.
Anyway, I want to thank Coach, because when I saw these goalposts going down, Coach, do you remember when they didn't have removable goalposts at Kinnick, and they had to start doing that because us crazy students we were dismantling goalposts. They had to pull them out of the ground and lay them on the ground and sit on them.
That's true. I have a piece of a wooden goalpost. I don't even know what game it was tied to, but it was a goalpost that had come down, and they gave each of the coaches a piece of the goalpost. I'm sure if I can step away, Corey, I can take a look at it and see. I'm not sure what game.
Go right ahead, Don.
I'll be right back.
Send you out for just a second. And Lemansky, you're stuck with me. I want to give everybody a real brief scoreboard update. I mentioned the games that are currently in progress, and that everybody wondering, Spencer Petrus's team, even though Petrus' numbers are actually decent today, 22 of 34 for 333 and 3 touchdowns. His team is getting absolutely rocked. 55-24 is the score. They're trailing on the road on the blue field at Boise State. Clemson, the 15th ranked Tigers, leading Florida State 23-7. Oregon State leading Colorado State 21-16. And I mentioned Michigan, Washington 17-14 in that game. USC leads Minnesota 17-10. Iowa State leading Baylor 26-21. Tennessee up on Arkansas early third, low scoring game there, 7-3. Florida up on UCF 24-3 in the third. Georgia Tech leading Duke 10-7 in the third, and Arizona State and Kansas tied at halftime 14 apiece. Some notable scores from around the country earlier today: Wisconsin beating Purdue 52-6. You have Pitt over North Carolina. Pitt might be a top 25 team next week. They're 5-0. Wake Forest over North Carolina State 34-30. Georgia over Auburn. Ole Miss over South Carolina. Indiana eventually pulling away from Northwestern. Virginia Tech over Stanford. Nebraska, low-scoring game, but they take down the Rutgers Scarlet Knights 14-7. Mentioned Vanderbilt over Bama, 40-35, biggest win in the history of that Commodores program. And, of course, last night, if people missed it, UNLV upset by Syracuse, and Oregon taking care of business against Michigan State. Anything else, Lemansky? We've got Coach Patterson back.
I think Coach should talk about his goalpost. Wasn't going to find it.
Here's the goalpost. What does it say, Don?
Says Iowa 30, Iowa State 14, September 29th, 1979.
Wow.
Year one. It was year one.
1979. That's great.
Yeah.
That thing's not developing moss or anything, Don. It's been around.
It really is a piece of wood.
It is a real piece of wood. That's great.
I didn't realize it was that momentous to win, but I guess Iowa hadn't won very many in previous years, so I guess any win was big.
Don, you're way too humble. That was pretty big compared to the Bob Cummings era. You're way too modest.
I do.
Mark Elliott's job. Did you know that?
What's that?
You saved Bump Elliott's job. He told Hayden Fry, if it doesn't work out, I'll get fired before you, Hayden.
Yeah, I've heard Bump say that. I do recall how many games Coach Cummings won in his 5 years. They gave him 5 full years, but his record was 17-38. So that's pretty kind to give a guy 5 years. Nowadays, you don't get more than 3 years. So you better show significant progress at the very least in year 3.
Excuse me, Coach. I got 2 things. I'll let you watch the Minnesota game. Minnesota just got a 4th and 2, and they're driving like heck. So I'm going to say 2 things and get the hell out of here. Corey, I'd like to pick on you, but too many people pick on you. But I will hold you accountable like a football player, Corey.
Okay.
You've got, I've got an Iowa helmet that your friend Mark Rogers says he'd take once he relocated. It's still in the package, and he's refused to take it because he's a Buckeye lover. And I'm going to hold you accountable to get that done.
Okay.
Or maybe we'll send it for Christmas to Mark Rogers. And when you see him next week, don't back down to him anymore. You just hold your own against him because, you know, he hates running ball clubs and he hates defense. You just keep up the good work debating Mark Rogers. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Lemansky. We appreciate your phone call as always and your support.
I'll close off with that, guys. Thanks so much for work on the show. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. All right. Blake, thank you for being here. Erica, thank you for the super chat as well. One thing I forgot to say, we still have not played a four-quarter game. Another reason why we lost. Also need a Hayden Fry story. So we'll put that birdie in Coach's ear as we head to our final few callers and comments of the night. Before we do that, a couple housekeeping things I don't want to miss. As I mentioned earlier, RTI Threads. Check out the apparel lines of Aaron Graves, Jacob Gill, Carson Shire, Zach Lutmer. As we head into basketball season, they've got deals with Peyton Sandfort and Josh Dix, and I believe Owen Freeman's on that list, I believe. So great stuff, and Iowa baseball as they get prepped for their season here in a few months. Check it all out, rtithreads.com. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse line. We've got Pat with us. Pat, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks for staying on for 3 hours. You guys are always awesome. But I think this is a total overreaction. Like, we literally just played a team that will probably win a national title. And the weirdest thing I thought about this year, this might be the only year where a Hawkeye couldn't start for Ohio State.
That's a tough one. Yeah, that's a good question.
Number 34 can start for him, I promise you.
Jay
Who?
Higgins. Jay Higgins. Honestly, Higgins and Jackson might both start for them. And Ohio State, I talked about it preseason, talking to some Ohio State beat writers prior to the game. It sounds like going into this game, the perception was that linebacker was their weakest spot on the field. So I'm guessing Jackson and Higgins would both have started, and maybe Castro would have found a place somewhere.
The only reason I don't say Castro is when they got Caleb Downs in the transfer portal. Like, Castro, like, every time I think Castro, to me, he'd be a second-round draft pick right now. Maybe fringe first, because like, a lot of people don't get, if you don't hear his name, he played a hell of a game. But, like, we went toe-to-toe with someone that's, like, if you go roster for roster, they're as good as Georgia, they're as good as Alabama, and we played with them for a half. Like, everyone calm down. Cade McNamara did not get Wally Pipp today. They just saved him a little bit. It's just, I thought we played a great game for where we're at right now. I think in a couple years, you let Lester keep developing, we're going to be fine. Like, we do not need to be pissed off about this. Like, honestly, from like a gambler's perspective, I thought this game was going to be 56-14 Ohio State. I thought we did well to hold them to 35. I mean, like, most teams, like, Ohio State is that good. I'm sorry, we're just not that good right now. Like, give us time, give us a little break. And also, too, Cade McNamara played a hell of a game. The amount of hits he took, and he was still completing passes. Like at second half, right? We're just tired. That's why all those guys are 5 stars, 4 stars on their side of the ball. They started beating us. They're a little bit more athletic, but it's okay. Like, we're in a good spot to keep going forward.
I'm not going to disagree with that. And like, given the schedule,
yeah.
I mean, if they had Oregon and even Michigan and Penn State in the schedule, I'd probably challenge that because they weren't really close. I mean, I agree with what you said in the first half. They were within reaching distance, but they never ever even sniffed the end zone with that first string Buckeye defense. So
no, what I'm saying though too is like if you go athlete for athlete, right? They should dominate us because they just have more weapons. They have more options. We just don't. And like when that happens, like once you get like, hey, we have this guy. Well, they got 3 of that. Okay, we have this guy. They got 2 of that. It's like, yeah, we should get killed. But at the same time, like we did go toe to toe with them. Like they were worried. Like I know their fans were like, holy shit, holy crap, we only scored like 7 points against them. Like, what's going on? Like, we should be up 35-0. Like, no, we played a great game. It's just we got tired. They got better.
They'll say it was a 35-0 game late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, but they're wrong. Like 7-0. Like honestly, I thought at half it'd be 28-zip. Then we're like, okay. It was good to see Sullivan play. And of course, once you put the backup quarterback in, he's going to play good, and everyone's going to be like, "Oh, he needs to start. He needs to start." I thought Cade played good. I think he just got hit too many times, and that's when he had to relax. I think Lester's doing a great job. Phil Parker deserves any kind of salary we ever want to give that guy.
Well, appreciate you calling in, and you were on hold a long time, Pat, so I do appreciate that. I know it takes a while to get through the line.
Hey, I'll stay on hold for you guys. You're probably one of the best shows ever. And Don Patterson, you are always awesome. Never doubt yourself. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you, Pat. Very much appreciated, and appreciate your perspective. And positive perspective is never a bad thing, whether you disagree with Pat or not. Erica, thank you for the super chat. She says it's not an overreaction caller. Some of us have felt this for a while, and I have no problem with each opinion at all. Lemansky, thank you for the super chat as well. CB, Corey, excellent comment. Hawks have 1 conference loss. I like Lester to date. I still like Tim Lester. Nothing I've seen has changed. I think there's little ways you can be critical of some of the different things. I think they've gotten too predictable on first down. It would have been nice to see a couple more deep shot attempts today, but those are things hopefully that get I would have hoped that the predictability on first down would have changed during the bye week, that would have been something adjusted. That'd be one thing I'd like to ask Tim or Kirk. Are you happy with the run pass variation on first down situations? And Don, I'd like to go back and chart. I don't know if there's a website or some way we could find that stat, what percentage of first down plays or runs, but
you can do it right on your phone. Just pull up the play-by-plays and you'd have to chart them as you see them on the sheet.
I don't know that I have the patience to do that, Don. But
it would take some time.
Maybe I can get one of my loyal callers and followers here on the show to do that. One of our next callers might be willing to do that. So Lemansky, thank you for the super chat. Is much appreciated. And let's see here. Let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We've got James. James, are you willing to go through and track
I was literally just about to say in the group thing that I said I'll get that for you if you need it.
All right. I'm going to rely on you, James. Go back and tell me how many runs and how many passes on first down plays.
I'll just do passes, and obviously if it's not a pass, I'll just do run and pass and then see how I can get for you and get the percentages for you. But
that would be great. You're a gem, James. I appreciate that.
Yeah. First off, one thing I want to say is I feel like the wide receivers in the first half at least played better than I thought they would. Like Jacob Gill looked really good in the first half. Vandersey was not dropping. And, he has a tendency to drop, but he was catching the stuff in the first half too that he kind of needed to catch. The one thing I want to say is I feel like they were getting stopped. Right? It was 14-0, right? And then you give them that short field, so it makes it 21-0. So obviously the defense had to try to stop them in that short field, right? But if you were thinking about it, they really didn't do if you take away that short field, it's really 28 to not. Right? And I know you can't do
Well,
that way. I know
I'll
you
say
can't do it
this.
that way, right? But
It's unfortunate they gave up that first drive of the second half. Very
Yeah.
similar to how they gave up the first drive of the first
yeah,
half. Like
for sure.
if I'm the defense, and in Phil Parker, that's what I'm looking at. Why are we giving up? And in this game specifically, Don, I saw a stat during the game. I think Iowa Athletics tweeted it out that Iowa hadn't given up a first drive touchdown in a couple of years, I think.
Right.
And they did that today, and then they gave up a first drive touchdown in the second half. So that's unfortunate because that puts you by just 14-0 seems like a monumental deficit in the horseshoe. And it just
Yeah.
felt like at 14-0, it kind of felt like it was over at that point, Don. Even
And
though
then-
it's not, it felt that way to me.
I didn't feel that way until they hit 21.
Yeah. Well, then they give them the short field, and it just snowballed. I mean, the turnovers
Right,
just
for
snowballed.
sure.
I don't think that, again, similar to 2 years ago, I didn't feel like the defense was bad. They really only gave up one big play to Jeremiah Smith. Those great receivers made a couple of plays in the red zone, but it was the short fields, breakdown and pass pro, turnovers, bad interception, and that's all she wrote.
Definitely, and that's how it kind of goes for them. But like, I feel like obviously you can't take back those 7 points, but like, it's hard to stop somebody when they have the ball on the 25, right? Like, it's hard to stop somebody on the ball, especially a team like that. A team like that is hard to stop when they have the ball on the 25. You know what I mean? Like, typically a team like that's either going to get a field goal or a touchdown, and more likely a touchdown if they have those kind of athletes, right? Like, it's hard to get a stop in that situation when they have the ball on the 25-yard line.
Well, here's one big difference in the game. Think of it this way. Ohio State was in the red zone 5 times, 5 touchdowns, 5 opportunities.
Yeah.
We never had a snap in the red zone the entire day. Not one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but-
so just disconcerting is they never even sniffed the red zone.
Right.
They
Yeah,
never
definitely.
ever get inside. They never even got inside the 35, did they? Well, they
What
may
was
have the field goal try was from 51, so they never got inside the 30. Is that fair?
The touchdown run, of course, that was
The touchdown run, with the exception being the fourth
that was
quarter,
28 yards.
the garbage time. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I just don't want this to get us down, obviously, as like a team. And I know it sucks to lose this game. I thought we had a chance, but I also knew that there's a possibility of snapping right here on both sides. But I thought it was all about how we came out with 7-0. Like the coach just said, 7-0 in the first half. I chalked it up as, okay, we have a chance, right? It's only down 7-0, right? Like, we played better than I think most people thought in the first half, right? Like, so like that. And then you gave up that drive and just kind of got stabbed you in the back. But Cade in the first half was there. I do agree with you on the runs. I feel like they also didn't do a good job of trying to like do outside runs, right? A lot of the same runs in the first half were the same thing, where they was trying to hit the same spot in the first half, right? Like a lot of the first down runs, the first down runs were in the same spot. They weren't really trying to stretch it out. They weren't trying to stretch it out either way. They mostly just going the same spot every time, and it wasn't working on the first down plays, and I didn't understand that, but.
I think maybe an issue of predictability to some extent.
Yeah.
James, on a number of fronts, not just with
Yeah.
Run versus pass, but also inside versus outside run. I mean, I had to go back and chart that, Don. I'm sure you will, but
No, definitely. Yeah, I'm just saying I get his predictability, but also like even like change it, like even you're running first down, sometimes maybe we try to spread it out, a little bit, do a toss or do something else, instead of trying to run in that same gap the whole time. Because they started, if you watch, they started kept having pressure right there. The D line right there was doing a really good job for them in that same spot, and we kept trying to run to that same spot, and it was just a
my
little
guess
bit.
is maybe they thought the athleticism of those guys out on the edge, they'd rather roll their dice and think they had more heading into the game, running more into the inside. But
For sure. But no, it was interesting to see, and obviously Washington's looking good against Michigan, but I also know Michigan's offense is very one-dimensional because their quarterbacks aren't. I know Cade's not very good either. I'm not saying Cade's very good either. That's not my point. I'm just saying I know Michigan has the issue where they're very one-dimensional because their quarterback's not very good. So I don't want to make it seem like, oh, they're looking real good, because I don't know how good this offense is for Michigan, if that makes sense.
absolutely. And James, you were on hold a long time as well. Always appreciate you hanging around. And when you get that stat, shoot it over to me on X if you could.
I'm going to work on it right now, and then I'll get it over to you. So.
Okay. Thank you, James. Appreciate
Yep,
the call, sir.
sounds good. Bye.
All right. Let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller, Doug.
Hey,
Welcome
can you guys see me?
We got you this time. You're here.
No,
Yeah, I'm using the phone. I don't usually do that, but the camera could be broken on the computer. You guys don't want to see me anyway, but anyway.
We could see your picture down below, and it froze, and then we had black up there last time. So I don't know.
It could have been a connection issue. I wanted to quickly say this to Don, and I should be a Cyclone because my mom went to school with Donnie Duncan's son at Gilbert High School in Iowa here, and so she was good friends with Donnie Duncan's son. So I just thought it was interesting that you brought that up. The '79 game. I know that they struggled once Earl Bruce went to Ohio State, and but yeah, so another little memory of my mom. But yeah, one of the reasons why I got on here because I think it was Corey was defending Chris Doyle, and Rabo happened in 11, and the racial stuff happened in 2020.
I was not defending Chris Doyle. Make sure we clarify.
The other,
yeah, the different Corey was defending Chris Doyle. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry for no. You didn't want to talk about it, and I don't really want to talk about it either. But the Rabo and racial stuff is 9 years apart. So, and I don't like it when someone's trying to call our players soft. I know the 11 players that were in the lawsuit. Don't sell the lawsuit if it's not legitimate. That's my point. So we settled that lawsuit. I want to forget about Chris Doyle. If you think abuse makes men, that's your issue. But abuse doesn't make toughness. And Chris Doyle definitely did stuff wrong, or else he would have. I don't know. But anyway, we got again. We don't want to talk about that. Again, I think yes, we need to donate more money to NIL. There's offensive. If everyone saying the exact same thing about our offense, I just as far as Kirk and Fran, it is appropriate to ask two guys in their mid to late 60s what their exit strategy is. It is appropriate. I don't blame any fan, but they gotta go out in the right way. I hope both coaches know when the time is to go out. Kirk's pretty much done the same thing year in, year out. I mean, we struggle against the good teams. We have. I brought up 04 earlier. We got blown out by Michigan that year, and then went on to win the Big Ten. We've struggled against the elite teams of the Big Ten. Even back, offense to Hayden Fry, even, we lost to Ohio State in 85. It's tough to go into Columbus and win. Don knows that better than anyone. You had the best Iowa team maybe in 85 with the best offense. And I know it was like a monsoon that game. Again, I was only 2. I watched a lot of Big Ten network stuff.
Wasn't it incredible, though, what Iowa did in 2009 with James Vandenberg going in there and going to overtime?
Yes.
That was an incredible game, performance, circumstance, down your quarterback. That was an incredible situation. I mean, everybody brings up 2017 because they won by the margin they did in Kinnick. But how about going on the road with your backup freshman quarterback and going to overtime? I agree with everybody else. I got this written down, 127-7. I agree with everyone else. I hate reflecting on 2009, 2004, 2008, and some of these wins against elite teams. And I'm looking at the last 4 elite teams that Iowa's played, and Iowa can't even sniff the red zone. That makes me upset. People have a right to be upset about that, Don. Do they not?
Yes.
It's so frustrating. I don't know how else to. It's so frustrating. And the problem is, Doug, they're not going to have another chance to make that right unless they get to Indy.
That's exactly what I was going to tell the fan base is that you've already mentioned it. I don't think they'll go 7-0. But again, you call me a homer all the time.
I think they've got a decent chance of doing it. Now, is that 20%, 30%? Somewhere in there, probably.
But Washington doesn't scare. I mean, the other thing I was going to mention, UCLA going out there doesn't scare me, even though travel is one of the things I wanted to talk.
Northwestern should not scare you either.
No, and I mean, I think we lucked out not playing Illinois and Indiana this year. Maybe
playing in Indiana, Illinois. How about Oregon? How about USC? How about Michigan? How about Penn State? I mean, it's amazing. You can't play everybody, but nevertheless.
Yeah, I never go. I don't care if you would. I want to win every game. If we backdoor into the playoffs and get embarrassed, that's what happens. I'd rather win 7 straight than go, well, let's lose a game so we don't go to the playoff. I mean, if you think like that, you're really weird to me. Let's lose a game so we don't go to Indianapolis and we don't go to.
Now I will say this. I will say this. I'm okay with the people, Doug, that say I'd rather win 7 games, go 10-2, and then have someone beat us out in the tiebreaker. Because I think there's an argument to be made that 10-2 could potentially get you in without a trip to Indy, but
me too.
Guarantees you're not going to get in because you're going to get a third loss. You see what I'm saying?
10-3, I agree with you 100%. I usually do, Corey, which scares me. 10-3 probably doesn't get you in, but 10-2 does.
10-3 100% does not get you in because that would be against 3 good teams, 3 losses. You got to beat somebody good. You got 13 chances 3 chances, you 0 for 3, and 3 losses ain't going to get you in as a non-conference champion. 10-2 could. 10-2 could. I don't think it probably would. With a blowout loss. If they had competed today, I'd feel better about 10-2 getting you in.
I don't think any of the 7 games should scare us. Again, going back to my question, I kind of asked this maybe on Monday too about the travel. With Washington coming, do we have any more of an advantage? That's a Saturday game, right? The UCLA game's a Friday game, right?
I think it's a kick. I think we absolutely have an advantage there.
At 9 a.m. Washington time, that game is in Kinnick next week.
The game that we gotta win. I'd hate to see your show after a loss to Washington at home, but I don't know how they're doing right now. But again, I hope we stop struggling and we can score a touchdown against somebody halfway decent. I'm glad that we were able to score 38 points against Minnesota, but I don't know how good Minnesota's defense is, and I know that 7 points won't win games. Under 100 yards of passing won't win games. Under whatever we have total offense won't run games. So they got to figure out a way to move the ball and go Hawks. Hopefully just everyone relax and let's enjoy what we can. It's better to, like I said, it's better than not having football. So
thank you, Doug. Appreciate the phone call. A DC Hawkeye, thank you for the super chat. Iowa basketball can be frustrating, but you always feel the coaches are trying their hardest to recruit and compete. With football, just feels like they leave things on the table in recruiting and coaching. Thank you, DC Hawkeye. Appreciate your opinion. 100%. Do appreciate it. Sam Corbin, I want to write a novel. Why only 50 characters? Just split them up with a bunch of super chats, Sam. I'm not gonna complain about that. I do appreciate your donation, your super chat. And our final
today's stats, Corey.
Done.
Our total offense was 226.
Yep. 226 to 412. So not quite as big of a gap as maybe one would think. I mean, it's a big gap, but it's not cataclysmic like we've seen in other games in recent years against that Ohio State team. But they just had short fields. So the 3 turnovers in the third quarter kills you. Those kill you. I mean, you short fields, you're done. If you don't give them short fields, you got a shot in the fourth quarter. Maybe you're down 14, but you got a shot. But you start turning the ball over, forget it.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Their second touchdown drive after they received the second half kickoff, that was probably 75 yards, right? I'm assuming.
Yes, it was a long, but the first 2 touchdowns were long drives. That's why I say maybe you get 14-0 down in the fourth, but at least you're not down 3 scores.
But the difference in those 2 drives, of course, the first one took 14 snaps. The second one, not very many at all.
Yeah, and the second one was the big play to Jeremiah Smith, and that was the one real big play that Iowa gave up all day.
Yeah.
Let's go to our final Iowa Smokehouse caller of the day. We've got Chase here. Chase, you said you weren't calling in, but here you are.
Yeah, I only got a couple minutes here, and all I want to say is, as a Hawkeye fan, since I was very little, my parents used to take me to games. Like, before I even knew what was happening, like, I'd ask Mom and say, hey, like, why do they keep stopping? Like, that's how little I was. I expect Iowa, as a football fan, to be contenders in the national championship. Like, that's my goals for Iowa football. I know they're not going to get there, and they're not there now. But even, like, today, I'm not even that upset with how they played today. Like, I was...
Well, you should be upset with how they played in the third quarter. You should be upset.
The O-line. I'm upset with the O-line. That's the only thing I'm...
Kate's got to protect the ball better than he did.
Right.
But, yeah.
It's just unfortunate. Turnovers.
Don, can we agree on that Cade's got to protect the ball better than he did in the third quarter? He fumbled the ball twice and threw an interception. Is that fair?
Yeah. The the one ball that was ruled a fumble, honestly, I thought as they were looking at it, I thought they may reverse the call because it looks to me in the pocket, the ball actually moved, the arm actually moved forward. Then they gave another little interpretation. They said, well, it's got to move forward with the quarterback having control of the ball. They said it appears he lost control of the ball a little bit as the arm went forward.
Yeah.
Close call, but
I don't think there was enough to overturn it personally, Don. That's my opinion. But
anyway, my point is it's hard to absolutely eliminate that kind of play sometimes.
Sure.
You know, that was the guy, you might recall the guy started up the field, and then when Cade stepped up in the pocket, he folded back inside, kind of hit Cade from a blindside position, really about a 3 o'clock position. Cade didn't see him coming in. Otherwise, he'd have had a chance to protect it, maybe just might target it. But anyway, those are tough situations. It's one thing when you lose the ball, you're out in space and you lose the ball. Well, clearly that's your fault. But in the pocket, of course, quarterback's eyes are downfield. He can sense pressure, but the bottom line, it's hard to have complete awareness around you if your eyes have to be downfield. That's the truth.
Even the two contested, I think was there 2 or 3 contested touchdown passes that they threw within the 20. That was like this close from being deflected or knocked away. But I mean, they still scored. But like those are, you can't blame the defense for letting them score that many points because I mean they played their butts off the first half of the game. And going down 7 at halftime, they came in. Yes, they let them score a lot, but half of that was on the offense.
Well, to set the record straight, their second touchdown, a little longer than I thought. I forgot they brought the ball out of the end zone. We tackled them on the 14. That was actually 9 plays, 86 yards. So they had 2 cross-country drives, 14 plays, 88, 9 plays, 86. It's unusual when we give up a drive of that distance. Very unusual.
Real quick, James just sent me stats, and assuming these are correct, he said that we don't have Ohio State stats yet, but 17 pass plays before today on first down, 37 runs. That's 69% run. So I said 80, closer to 70%. So I don't know. I'm guessing that went up a little bit today because it felt like a lot of runs on first down. But anyways, I'd like to get that number down. Maybe go like 60%. Get it down from 70 down to 60. That'd be my goal.
I was so really happy to see that Iowa could pass the ball on third down and still make the first down. Like you look back at the Penn State game last year, we did nothing. What did we have, like 2 first downs the whole game?
So I'm saying they moved the chains decently well in the first half.
Right,
Chase.
and I
really did.
I saw you answered my super chat earlier, and that's one thing I wanted to really emphasize is because this offense is different. I think it is better, for sure.
Yeah, 100. Oh yeah, it's better.
Yeah, 100% better.
Oh yeah. Compare what we saw today with what we saw 2 years ago in Columbus. And real quick, let me give you the critical down numbers just so you have these for people because we're talking about for the entire game. Iowa, I was actually on third down. They were critical downs. They were 5 of 12. If you look just at the first half, let me grab just first half numbers here. Let's see if it's first quarter. I don't know if I can find this, Don. You're better at navigating these box scores than I am. Third quarter. Why am I not seeing? I'm seeing quarter by quarter. Where is my half by half breakdown, Don?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll have to look for this later. Anyways, go ahead, Chase.
But I mean, kind of like what you're saying right there with the offense is better. But I mean, we gave them 3 times inside our own 20 or 30, and they had easy scoring opportunities. I mean, you eliminate the fumbles and the interception. I mean, every quarterback should have an interception. No matter, you got to take risks to make big plays. I mean, C.J. Beathard, I was talking to some of my friends earlier on the phone after the game, and I said C.J. Beathard had interceptions, but the guy always made plays.
Yeah, he was also a lot better than Cade with his feet.
Right, and then we talked about Brendan Sullivan too. I mean, is Brendan Sullivan really the answer? Because
We don't know.
like today, O line couldn't block. It doesn't matter if you have
Yeah,
Brennan in.
well, okay. So I agree with you for the most part. However, I'll give you a perfect example. One play that Cade actually did escape the pocket, but because I think partly because he's not real comfortable throwing on the run, he underthrows his guy, and that's a big 35 to 40 yard gain or more that doesn't get had. That is one that if Brendan makes that play, that's a huge difference in the game. Just one super explosive play like that. So I don't know. I'm just saying, like, even on broken plays, if a play breaks down and there's no time, if you have a guy who's a little bit more adequate at getting out of the pocket and throwing on the run, that could help your offense substantially.
Right.
Could.
And no offense to Cade whatsoever, but my last point I'm gonna make before I leave, because I have to get back to doing what I was doing. Why in the world why do we start Cade when we know Brennan's probably more than likely going to be the starter next year? Why don't we just go ahead and just give it to him, let him play finish this year? I mean, he could be just as good as Cade, but why not let him finish this year, and so next year he has even a better opportunity to make the most of what he has left of football right now.
Fair questions. Unless the coaches just think Cade's a whole head above Brendan.
I don't see it because I feel like it's just because Cade's the captain, and everybody relies on him to make.
I don't think Cade's much of any better than Brendan. Maybe he's marginally better, but I doubt it. But I don't know. I can't really say definitively.
I mean, Brendan looked good.
His numbers at Northwestern were pretty good.
What was it, 67%?
They were pretty good numbers. I mean, everybody wants to talk about Cade's numbers with a much more talented Michigan team. How about Brendan Sullivan's numbers against the same conference and a less talented Northwestern offense?
And then Cade's been hurt so much too. So I mean,
yeah, there's that too.
I feel like Brendan has such a better opportunity because he's played more ball in the last 2 years.
Well, Chase, get back to what you're doing. We appreciate you giving us a call and supporting the show.
Yeah, see you guys later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Corey, let me mention these last 3 touchdown drives: 3 plays, 19 yards, 6 plays, 40 yards, and then 7 plays, 27 yards. So 2 of those drives were killers: 19-yard drive, 27-yard drive, and then the 40-yard drive is not much further. So 3 short fields.
All right, let's Corey, thank you for the super chat. What's it going to take to get Sullivan as the starter? It's time for a QB change. It's just not going to happen, Don. If you and I are saying Cade looked decent today or pretty good at times, there's no way Kirk is making that change. Because our expectations for Cade, I think, in my opinion, are higher than Kirk's.
Yeah, you've heard me say before, Corey, and this will always be true. The quarterback gets more credit than he deserves when you win. He undoubtedly gets more blame when you lose.
Eric, thank you for the super chat as well. That's why I'm annoyed we didn't even compete. And DC Hawkeye, what did you make of the commentator's comment about Caleb Johnson being in so he could reach the 100-yard mark? I thought a lot of things Brad Nessler and Danielson said were kind of dumb, frankly. So I did hear it. I didn't think much of it other than I don't care. Let's see. So we've got our good friend Kyle, who's just going to join us for a second because I want to get us off the air so we can catch the tail end of these games. Washington now up on Michigan 24-17, a little over midway through the 4th, and it's 17 all USC Minnesota. So I'm going to put Kyle on for just a second. Before we do that, a reminder, folks, if you've not checked out our landing page over at Ascent Nutrition, be sure to do that. They've got so many great products, and of course they're owned. This company is a Hawkeye company with strong Iowa roots. Its owner, Ascent Nutrition, good friend of mine. And as I've continued to get to know Lance over the years, I've continued to be impressed with what he's doing to help people, Hawkeye fans across the state, across the country, as it relates to having a clear, focused brain throughout the day. They're a proud Iowa company, and they go through rigorous third-party testing so you can trust what you're getting. That's with a 90-day money-back guarantee. Their products are organic. They're wild harvested. They're pure. They're clean. Several different products should catch your attention, but one, I should say 2, here on the landing page. This is goascentnutrition.com/Hawkeyes. Their pine needle extract and their humic and fulvic acid. Great for gut health, brain health, energy levels. It's all great, and the pine needle extract actually tastes really good. You can read all about it here at goascentnutrition.com. For a limited time, Ascent Nutrition is offering 15% off when you purchase this product, as well as their humic and fulvic acid. Use the code Hawkeyes15. That's Hawkeyes15 at checkout for 15% off the bundle. Again, courtesy of Ascent Nutrition, owned by former Iowa graduate Lance Shuttler, making people's lives and Hawkeyes' lives better across the country. All right, let's go to our final caller of the night, and it's a good friend of ours. Kyle is with us. Kyle, apparently it's a Kyle sandwich because for some reason you're in the middle. Let's get you. You don't deserve to be in the middle. Let's move you over. See you, Kyle. How are you doing? No, I can't see you.
Well, I haven't been able to tune into the.
Go ahead and talk a big talk like you do over text during the games, and talk about how bad Iowa is and how they're not going to do. Go ahead.
I picked Ohio State to cover comfortably today, and I stand vindicated.
Great. I'm glad you feel vindicated.
I'm very disappointed to be vindicated.
Go hug your teddy bear tonight and feel vindicated. I'm glad you feel that.
You know, when I was 10 years old, I had a Hawkeye pillow pet. Maybe I'll go find that and, cry tears into that tonight.
We'll get you a Buckeye, a Brutus little mascot to hug. How's that?
What's the guy that sits in the front row? The big nut or whatever his name is.
I can't stand that guy.
I know, me neither. He's been sitting in the front. I remember watching him when I was 9 years old when Iowa almost went into the shoe and won in 2009. And I still remember watching same guy dressed up the same way. But yeah, I don't know. Like from me calling in tons of other times, I love diving into the numbers and the analytics, and I watched as much of this game as I could today when I was at work at the golf course. And it was just, at a certain point, I was just kind of done with looking at any of the box score, looking at anything, because it's just like, man, it's such a predictable script. It's such a far cry from the Iowa program that I grew up knowing and loving. Because while there weren't as many, obviously last 5-6 years, we've had a couple of 10-win seasons. 2015, we had a 12-win season, and that's all been great. But man, to think back to my younger childhood of a lot of seasons with 4, 5, 6 losses, but a lot of really, really great moments. Obviously, Michigan at home at Kinnick, and Minnesota at home at Kinnick, and Ohio State at home at Kinnick. And just, going into those games feeling like, man, we've got a fighting chance to win against just about anybody. And you would have all the media people talking about, Iowa's a tough out. Iowa's a tough game for any of these top teams. And it's just not the case anymore. It's, I don't go into these games with a whole lot of hope. And I want so badly to be wrong, but at this point, the track record is what it is. They've lost 8 straight games to ranked opponents, and they, I was kind of flicking back through some of them, over the last several years. They haven't scored a touchdown, an offensive touchdown, with the game within 20 points in any of those 8 games. Not a single one. The Michigan touchdowns were with the game way out of reach. The touchdown against Ohio State when it was 54-10 was a defensive touchdown. They've gone it was like 75 drives or something against these ranked opponents with no offensive touchdowns with the game.
Where did you hear that stat?
I was just looking through the game logs. There's no offensive touchdowns with the game in the balance. The Michigan touchdowns, the 2 at the end, were super late. The Ohio State was a defensive touchdown. They got shut out all 3 games last year. They got shut out this year until it was 35-zip. The last time they had a meaningful touchdown against a ranked opponent was against Kentucky in 2021. All of these games, and then Michigan was the previous one in the Big Ten championship game. They were 42-3. They don't score touchdowns in these meaningful games anymore. And I don't know if it's, obviously it's been an offensive problem. I know it's been a Brian Ferentz problem, and Brian's gone. So it's somewhat.
And we're 5 games into a new era.
I know. And I know it's somewhat unfair, but this,
the country.
This looked a lot like, I mean, it didn't look a lot like 2023, 2022, but like it looked a lot like 2021 when they played some of those teams when they were.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, the deep shots
I don't agree with that at all.
The deep shots that they took were horrible.
They didn't play anybody like this in 2021, first and foremost.
Michigan wasn't like this in 2021.
Michigan in 2021
in the
Michigan
conference championship game.
Michigan wasn't as good as this, and they didn't play Michigan on the road.
Okay, I mean they
and I guarantee. I mean, we can pull up. Should we pull up the stats? We can pull up the stats. I'm not trying to defend Iowa. I'm just simply saying it did not look like what we've seen over the last 4 years in these big games.
I mean, I'm not saying it was the exact same thing, but I mean they were non-competitive in this game. They didn't even in the first half. I didn't watch the first half and think, oh, they've kept it close enough. They have a chance to win. I mean, it didn't.
Which Michigan game are we talking about in 21?
2021 Big Ten championship game.
Oh, Big Ten. Okay, sorry. I'm referring to the game in Kinnick. Was that 22?
22. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you're right about 21 Michigan Big Ten championship game. Yes, it did look like that.
Yeah,
however, that game, I don't remember what it was at halftime. Was it 14-3 at halftime?
14-3, and then the third. It was the same kind of deal. It was close at halftime. Third quarter blew it open midway.
Let me read you some stats, though. Let me read you some stats from that game. First of all, ironically, that was Cade McNamara. Spencer Petras, 9 of 22. 9 of 22 in that game for a $137. Iowa's best rusher was Gavin Williams, 12 carries, 56 yards. Tyler Goodson, 18 carries, 50 yards. The only wide receiver to have a catch, there were two. Keegan Johnson, 1 catch for 13 yards. Arlen Bruce, 2 catches for 10 yards. The reason I bring that up is now look at Iowa's stats from today. Cade McNamara at quarterback, even though the result was not what we wanted, 14-20 through the year. Turnovers killed him. There's no question about it.
How many yards did he hit today? Did he hit
the ball?
100 yards or so?
98.
98. Okay.
Passing yards. Reese Vanderzee, 3 catches, 29 yards. Jacob Gill, 3 catches, 24 yards. Jarrett Bowie, 1 catch, 10 yards. Caden Weegan, no catches for Caden, but you did have 5 catches for Lachey, 2 catches for John. I'm just saying they're spreading the ball around more. The quarterback numbers have improved as far as efficiency is concerned. And although they're not running the ball as well, today they didn't run the ball as well. They have earlier this year. I think there's reason to think that they're heading in the right direction. They're not there yet, but they're heading in the right direction 5 games into a new era with an offensive coordinator that's brand new. That's all I'm saying. I think it looked different. You look at the box score, you kind of have to read between the lines a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with all that. It's just when you have so much scar tissue from the previous 7 games in a row, you see that third quarter and you go, okay, here we go again. That was the thought that went through my head. Even though it's different, it's supposed to be different. It's a different guy up in the press box, not the guy on the sidelines that was, but still, it's just that here we go again. And I don't know. It just, I mean, it's also, I mean, we talked about this preseason. To me, it's depressing because we looked at this season, we looked at this schedule and we went, man, you've got a super experienced defense. You've got a super experienced offensive line. You've got a quarterback who should be getting healthy. You've got a really good running back room. You've got a really good tight end room. You've got a really good kicker. We have a punter we're hopeful about, a new offensive coordinator, and a favorable schedule. That to me, like looking at what the schedule could be like in the future with all the players on defense graduating, like it just sucks that it really feels like this was a great opportunity for this team. And I don't know how you feel. I know you've been more optimistic than I have about their playoff chances, but like it's gotta be almost, if it's not dead, it's on complete life support, isn't it?
If they win out, they're in.
You still think that they're in? I
think so, because I think, they're in if they win the Big Ten title, right? So
okay, well, yeah, I'm disregarding that.
Like the opportunity, whether you think that's hogwash or hilarious or whatever, I'm just saying the door hasn't totally closed, because if they win out, they're probably in the Big Ten title, and then they are in if they win the Big Ten title. Like 8-1 is still on the table, and the schedules are very favorable. Would you agree with that, Kyle? They could go 8-1 in the Big Ten.
I do. I think,
and if they go 8-1, if they go 8-1, there's still a decent shot they're in Indy. Whether they get blown out in Indy or not, there's still a decent shot they're in Indy.
Yeah, there is. I would say I look at the schedule. The only thing I would say is that there's not a lot of like 85-15 games. There's a whole bunch of games I feel are like 60-40 Iowa games or 65-35 Iowa games. And I think the odds that you run the table on a whole bunch of 60% games is not super high. Yeah, even though they're all individually favorable.
Maybe
Like
it's 25%, maybe it's 35% that they win out. And they have to win out.
You think it could be that?
They're not winning the Big Ten at 9-3. They're not getting to the championship game at 9-3, and they're not getting in as an at-large at 9-3.
No, they're not.
And they don't right now. They're not a top 12 team. They're not probably even a top 25 team.
They're not. I mean, if the AP were to rank them right now, I don't think the AP would have them in the top 40 right now.
But that's because the AP is stupid.
Yeah,
that's just because
the committee wouldn't have them in the top 40 right now.
But hold on a second.
So they have a long way to climb.
But you and I both know, Kyle, the AP poll is stupid because these writers and these voters don't pay any attention to the entire landscape of college football. They just look at record and they're like, oh, this team beat this team, we're going to move them down this much. Iowa's lost to an unbeaten Iowa State team who, by the way, is pulled away from Baylor 40-21 and maybe the best team in the country. I'm not saying they're definitely a top 25 team, but I could see them finishing in the top 25, and they may be one of the 25 best teams. But Ohio State's really, really good. That's all I'm saying.
They are. Yeah, they are very good. And I have to say, as you can call me a salty fan or not, but the fact that Nebraska is finally winning some games and Iowa State's winning some games does not make this experience through the first 5 weeks of the season any more pleasant. I have to say that.
Well, not a real impressive offensive performance out of Nebraska today. They got some problems, but they survived against a
But
tough,
that's a game over the last 5 years that Nebraska loses, right?
Yeah, they hadn't won. That might be their first one possession win.
They were like 0 of 13 or something in one score.
They finally won a one score game. That's big news coming out of Lincoln today. So Kyle, I'm going to let you slide because I want to get to this 2-minute drill. Two different games. Washington leading Michigan and Minnesota tied with USC with 2 minutes to go. So I'm going to let you slide, get Coach and I out of here, and we'll move on.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, all right. Have a good night.
Appreciate it, sir.
Go ahead. I do have one question about Kyle's reference to these last 8 opponents, these 8 disappointing games in a row against ranked teams. When he says ranked, is he talking top 10, top 20? What does he mean by ranked?
I think, Kyle, you mean ranked when Iowa played them, correct?
Yes, but all 8 of them finished ranked at the end of the season too. So, and they were all
Iowa State's ranked right now. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, they had to be ranked when Iowa played them. That was what I looked at. I looked at their ranking when Iowa played them. But all
ranked
8
in the top 25. We're saying.
Yeah, ranked in the top 25 when Iowa played them, and I think all of them except Kentucky finished in the top 12 of the final rankings as well. So they were all good teams. It's just disappointing they were non-competitive. The irony in that, actually, too, now that you say that, Corey, is before the 0-8, they had a 4-game win streak against ranked opponents. That was Wisconsin, Indiana, Iowa State, and Penn State. All 4 of those teams ended up finishing the year outside the top 25. So those were big wins at the time, but in retrospect, a little bit more questionable.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, Midwest Storm Chasing, thank you for the super chat. Heading back to pick corn. Thanks for staying live so long. Appreciate you guys, and stay safe out there, Chase. Do appreciate that. All right, folks. Iowa falling to Ohio State 35-7. Maybe Don and I can get together. I don't have enough strength in me or the time this evening to preview Washington. We'll get together maybe for a few minutes, Don. Can we do that? Maybe get together for a brief preview here sometime this week. If you have not subscribed, folks, hit the like button and subscribe. Very simple to do. A couple clicks of the button. Thank you for being here over the last almost 4 hours. For Coach Patterson, I'm Corey Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm in Iowa. Postgame with Coach Bon Patterson. We will talk to you next time.